You don't want this fueled by this. You know it's gonna crash. You don't want this. You don't want this. You don't want this. Being the whip thing, being fit, lean up, so no. Feel my team with a big thing, clean and me, man, never go broke. See, man, up in the trap, that I know, so we got popo, no one ever so cold. Come whenever the back, get a back. You don't want this. 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 It's like Bitcoin, it enables the emergence and awakening of the sons of God.
Loren, is your DJ set over, or
You
is it
know,
still going?
I love Real Richard, man. We've been just kind of randomly, he gave us access to pretty much his whole library. So we've been just randomly going through different Real Richard Bitcoin songs the last few mornings and enjoying them all. I have. So yeah,
Yeah, he's
DJing's
great.
done. Yeah,
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate that.
my pleasure.
We're just letting everybody pile in here today. As everyone knows, we're going to have Troy Cross today. He actually joined the stage, so I don't know if that means he needs to jump earlier. And if that's the case, we can jump into discussions with him, or maybe he just wants to hear our morning nonsense, our Bitcoin
The
view.
Morning Nonsense brought to
Yeah,
you by
brought to you by Lauren.
Terence
Lots of
Michael.
jibber jabby from
Jibby
Lauren.
Jabber. Hey, you know what? I'm glad to see Matt up here because
It's a lot of
yesterday,
slow hashing from Lauren until
slow
Troy
hashing,
comes on here and he hits the target, and we move on to the next block.
fast hash. We like
Yeah.
to use the word hash as much as possible. The innuendo that keeps on giving in the Bitcoin space. Matt, glad you're up here, man. We struggled yesterday. I thought maybe Terrence had blocked you or something because we
Well, I
could
thought it
not
was
get him up
Matthew
here.
McConaughey, and I'm like, don't you have to get back to set? I don't
Right.
understand.
Yes.
Yeah,
I know you're producing his next movie and you were mad. So you were like, no, you can't come up here and talk Bitcoin, sir. You have to go back to set.
that's
Maybe
right.
we go around the horn, just say good morning to the folks that are up here already.
Okay.
Robert?
Yeah, let's
Robert,
do that.
formerly known as Infra. Good morning, sir. Please don't go on a 10-minute rant on the markets quite yet. We'll maybe
But you can give us a quick summary because you're
37 seconds or less.
It's all
Go.
it's all happening. It's
Shit's
happening.
hitting
It's
the fan.
happening. Yeah, it's
I love you,
happening.
Robert.
all right. Let's say good morning to Dark and then Old Taylor.
Good morning, everybody. I think it's happening.
It's
It's
happening.
happening.
Okay.
Old
I'm gonna have
Taylor.
to.
Old
I'm
Taylor
gonna need
must
some
have.
context later. I don't know what that means. You mean another 10-minute block is happening? Because that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they're talking about the giant hunk of crap heading towards the fan. But old Taylor's back. He must have forgiven me for abusing him on the space the other day. Sorry, sir. Good morning, Taylor.
Hey, it's 9 p.m. here,
Oh
so good
yeah,
evening,
that's
good
right.
morning, and
From
just
India.
it's all happening. RonPaul.exe.
Nice.
Okay, I'm a little in the dark. I don't know what it's happening means, but hey, Matthew McConaughey, how's it going? All right, all right.
All right, all right. So we're going to start this morning with a quick 3-hour history of money. We're going to talk about the history of technology, try to weave it together. Should be a great discussion.
Great. Always
Love
love
it.
the Putin answer. We've also got the handle for Bitcoin is for everyone, the conference that's going to be up in Portland August 1st. I'm super excited. It'll be my first time attending. Is there a voice behind that handle, or the handle just sits there? Let's see what happens. Yeah, that's what I thought. We're being surveilled. All right, and it looks like right now, see, we've introduced everyone who happens to be on stage. We've got Troy
Except
Cross here. So,
Troy.
Troy, I don't know if you're just listening in now or you want to talk, because that would be fantastic. We could also get you out of here earlier if you probably have something more important to do than jibber
Hey,
jab like
hey,
most of us.
hey, 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 it's
Like
Terence.
Loren. Loren has nothing else to do, so that's why he's here.
It's a can of worms.
I'm just waking up and I'm happy to listen in because I don't know what it is either, even though I know it's happening.
Yeah,
Mm,
let's
well
find out.
said.
That's true. You're on the West Coast as well, so yeah, you've got the same. Most of us on here are on the West Coast. Um,
The West Coast is the best coast, baby.
Yeah,
Hey,
Lauren, Dark, Robert, you. Yeah, what?
yeah. Oh, I was just gonna say maybe we could go to Robert, aka Infra, to figure out maybe what it is, because I'm kind of curious as well. I think I have
Yeah.
an
So
idea, but
remember like couple like a month and a half ago, and I was like, hey guys, I know it's off topic, but I was just looking at the balance sheet and the current account, and I was like, guys, I think like the Fed is gonna step in and the balance sheet's gonna go higher. Well, it kind of started a little bug in my brain, and kind of got me going down the road, and starting to think about it. And I firmly believe that the U.S. currently is, now it's all but confirmed that the U.S. is experiencing what emerging markets have called, for decades, a balance of payments crisis. And that, we see the long end of the treasury, long end treasuries are just absolutely puking. The yield on the 10-year overnight, from the low of 380 at 386 to the high that we saw overnight was 61 basis points, that the yield moved higher. So yield is inverse to the bond, meaning bonds were getting dumped super hard over the past 3 days. And this is in the midst of the highest tariffs in 100 years, the largest negative growth shock that should be causing people to flee to bonds, right? Not dump them, not short them, not sell them, but buy them, right? The yield should be plummeting down, but instead they're skyrocketing higher. They're vertical. They're literally vertical. And at the same time, we see the dollar selling off. So what that indicates, it's one of the hallmark symptoms of a balance of payments crisis, but it definitely indicates that there's capital rotate continuing, right? We've talked about this for many weeks now. Capital is continuing to rotate out of dollar-based assets. We see, the equity market's really weak. The VIX is over 50. The MOVE index, which is the VIX, the volatility index for the U.S. Treasury market, the biggest market in the world, the MOVE index printed a 139 yesterday. Anything over 130, according to the creator of the index, Harley Bassman, noted bond expert, big bond guy. Anything over 130 is significant dysfunction, and it printed a 139. Intraday today, it's apparently as high as 171. So these are levels. It's on my profile. I'll put it in the nest so people have an idea. But the only other times that the MOVE index has been this high, were long-term capital collapsing in 1998, Lehman Brothers collapsing in September of 2008, and SVB March of 2023. Even COVID was lower than the index. The volatility of treasuries was lower during even COVID. So this is literally the third highest reading on record, for the biggest market in the world. And I just again, another day that implied correlations are moving higher. This is a massive deleveraging, a massive deleveraging. And we're entering, and then you bring in the China news. I won't go all into all that, but you start considering all that news, and it's pretty clear that what Darkside and I have been saying for a while, right? Like trade wars lead to currency wars. We're like it started. Like the currency war has already started.
Hey,
And
Robert,
so yeah.
how if you don't
Robert.
know this answer, maybe Troy might know, but how soon do you think the central bank of Bitcoin will meet and change the monetary policy in light of?
Exactly. Exactly.
Hey, I
This
just
is
want to remind everybody too, when you're actually shopping on Temu, don't forget to multiply the price by 104%. So your $3 item will now be $6. Don't forget to do that, folks, from
yeah,
Temu.
look, like the not only so kind of bringing in China just briefly. They're devaluing their currency, right? And they've said that they've indicated they might devalue up to 30%. That is huge, right? That's what we saw during COVID, and we know how painful that was. About 30%. That's what they're talking about. So the reason that they haven't already done that, it makes their exports continue, right? If we put a 30% tariff on China, but then they devalue by 30%, Americans pay zero extra. The price did not change for Americans. So it offsets the tariff, right? So that's why they would devalue, is because it basically kind of offsets whatever tariffs we might be putting in. But it's not without risk. The reason they haven't done that is capital flight, right? Like it's the same thing we would say, right? No one wants to be in a currency that's going to be devalued, so you sell the currency, right? Pushing it down, and you rotate into, more safer assets. You don't want to hold Chinese bonds either, right? Especially when the yield is 1%. So what do you want to hold? Well, like Bitcoin emerges yet again as, this neutral, the monetary policy. It's unconfiscatable. You can transport it over borders by memorizing, 12, 24 words, right? Like all the properties we know. Bitcoin starts to emerge. So like this is all hyper bullish. I understand it's volatile. I understand the equity market's puking, and there will be significant volatility. But generally speaking, as long as your time horizon is over a year, this is very bullish for Bitcoin. Gold is up over 3%. I don't think I've seen that in a long, long time. Gold's up over 3%, and Bitcoin is up 1%. And the equity market looks like it's about to puke. I mean, it just turned red on the day. VIX is above 50, so there will be volatility. But like as long as your time horizon is a year, 2 years, 3 years, man, this is the big print that Lawrence Lepard wrote his book about. This is the curve steepening that I've been talking about, right? When treasury entering a recession, entering a growth scare, where rates actually move higher, right? Like this, all the stuff that we've all been talking about is playing out. It's spooky. I never really thought that I just never really considered the fact that I was actually correct, or would be proven correct. Like it's pretty wild what we're seeing, and so just buckle in. Grab some popcorn. Don't use leverage. Try to hang on. Don't make any rash kind of decisions. And it's gonna be exciting. This is once in a generation, right? And we are just getting started. Like we haven't even gotten to the Mar-a-Lago Accord. We haven't even gotten to the kind of monetary reordering phase, right? Like this is just now starting. So yeah, hang in.
It's
And it's
possible
been
Lawrence
great.
Lepard was behind all of this just so he could sell more copies of his book. That's kind of what I was thinking.
Ooh, good thinking, Terence. Hey, should we say good morning to Puncher,
We should
also
say
known
good
as
morning to
Kevin?
Puncher. I'd also love to hear
Jason?
Dark's view on this. Yeah.
Jason popped up here as well. Good morning, Jason.
Good morning. Thanks for having me up. Just can't wait to hear Joe come in later and get into it again.
We're all on our best behavior today because we have a guest. So manners,
Terrific.
please. Yes.
Hey, Puncher, you want to say hello? Or Dark, any comments on what Infra just said?
Puncher came off mute, but I can't hear him. I talked to Puncher last night because I changed my schedule around a little so I could be in Vegas the whole time. Initially, I was just going to be there for the first 2 days before the event, but I switched it up. So I was coordinating with Puncher on accommodations and whatnot. So I did speak with him. I know he's alive and well.
Something
There
tells
he
me
is.
Puncher
There he is.
knows Troy because he's friends with Len Alden and Booth and all of those people. Puncher, do you know Troy Cross? I mean, have you guys met in person?
I have not met Troy. No.
Okay. I mean,
Look
we all
forward
know
to
who he
meeting him.
is, but yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I have not a lot to add. I just really appreciate Infra Roberts' analysis, and more than anyone else, I think his is spot on, and I really look forward to reading that more than anything. And I just laughed like the earlier podcast, which is mostly TradFi guys, is, I mean, it's almost comical in some ways, but the value signaling that they're all for the middle class. And, their biggest concern is that the middle class and the poor are going to get slaughtered by Trump's actions. It's amusing, but I'll stop there.
It reeks of won't somebody think of the kids when in reality they don't have any kids?
Yeah, exactly.
It also reeks of bots. They're really bot heavy in there.
Cat ladies.
But we
Dark,
digress. We know
Dark
what
made a
it is now.
Dark made a
So
prediction last night on Twitter. I don't know if that was tongue in cheek, Dark, or what do you think? The Fed's going to move here?
Well, it depends on whether that freezing up in the bond market that Robert's referring to continues, right? So the symptoms are as he laid out, right? And the patient's on the table, and credit markets are beginning to lock up. Last night we saw, we were watching the 10-year just absolutely explode higher with no liquidity. And when there's no liquidity in the interbank market, the SOFR rate was blowing out. Um, that's when things lock up, right? If banks can't lend to each other, if we start hearing more about those two famous words, counterparty, if we start hearing about counterparty exposure, that's when the Fed's going to have to step in, not to protect the stock market, but to protect the credit markets, right? So you remember that the banks are the friends of the Fed, right? They're the owners of the Fed, and they're the members. So it's the banks that the Fed's going to step in to protect. And yeah, I mean, it's looking really ugly out there. I mean, these are conditions, as Robert was pointing out, we haven't seen in many years. I've never seen this scenario play out as Robert was laying out. Look, you have bonds up, dollar down, stock down, bond yields up, I should say, right? And then you have interbank lending freezing, right? So that means credit markets are getting super, super tight. And I do believe that I think I'll be impressed if we make it through the weekend without hearing about real problems.
Well, to what do you attribute? You and I were watching it in real time. I forget whose space we were on last night. Maybe Mario's,
Phillies,
but
yeah.
it was 4.3, and then it went 4.35, and then 4.4, and then 4.5. I mean, it was like a penny stock moving last night, and then it pulled back. Is there any idea why it pulled back to 4.3 ish, or is that just?
Maybe because there's no transparency, right? There's nothing for us to audit.
Well, it's also a liquidity issue. Look, we're back to 4.45 right now, so we're almost back to where we were last night, which was I think we got to 4.51. I saw the high print when I went to bed.
61 bips in 3 days. 61 bips.
You just got to understand, for treasuries to make a move like that means that there's no money in the system to buy them, right? The liquidity is drying up. So it's not like a penny stock, right? This is something far more serious, which is banks don't have cash, right? I think just try to process that we have printed via the debt markets $37 trillion in money, and there's no money in the system, which means there's intense amounts of losses. Like, all of the trouble that we know is sitting in the banks is starting to bubble up to the top, and
Yeah,
that's
did
really go ahead,
yeah,
Ron.
yeah, did you see the 3-year auction yesterday? It had the
Yeah,
third highest tail on record.
on record. Yeah, look, things are bad. Like, they're bad at the credit level. So it's not just the equity markets are a tiny blip compared to the credit markets. And now that you're seeing spreads blow out, you're seeing the US Treasury market start trading like a penny stock, as Puncher said. That's not good, right? That's the point where the Fed needs to step in and inject, monsters amounts of liquidity into the market to stabilize things. And I expect that's what we're going to see.
Is there a 10-year auction this week?
Yep.
Maybe I'm misinformed,
Yep.
but so what do you expect to happen there,
Very
Robert?
high tail, right? And the tail, just very, very simply, is like in a treasury auction, there's a say 30 billion of notes that need to be auctioned. If there's no bid, to Darkside's point, if there's no bid at say one, right, and there's not enough people willing to buy at one, and you got to go all the way up to 2 or 3%, right? Just throwing out numbers. The spread between what is the rate, what is the free market rate at the time of the auction versus what rate must be, what rate is what is needed to eat up all the supply, right? That difference between what is it trading at the time of auction versus the high, the high interest rate that the bid to eat up the entire supply, that is called the tail. And so I expect we see, and it's a signal of very low demand, right? If there's usually you see high demand, right? So usually you don't have a high tail, a big tail, but I think we see a big tail. There's a 30-year auction tomorrow for 22 billion, and there's a 10-year auction today for 39 billion. If it could get ugly. It could get very ugly.
Hey, can I just jump in here to do a little housekeeping? Um, this is kind of like our warm-up act while we let the room fill up and whatnot. We will get to Troy, and I don't know, Terence, usually we just kind of keep this as a community discussion type thing, not like a one-on-one or, two people interviewing Troy, but we
We
let
usually just mute you, yeah, and
yeah,
then we
well, that always is
discuss.
helpful because
Yeah.
I definitely can bull guard the mic. But often we try to keep it somewhat civil where we go to hands and allow people to ask questions of whatever guests we have at the time. So back to regularly scheduled program. So if you do have a question when we hit that point where we get Troy up blabbling away and things get kind of intense and you can't get a word in edgewise, throw your hand up and it makes it a lot easier for the hosts and co-hosts to actually work your question in. So we'll switch to that. Now we know what it is, and it sounds exciting. It's nice to have Bitcoin around so we can sit here and eat our popcorn and watch stuff happen and pontificate about it and pat each other on the back, knowing that we made right choices whenever we got into Bitcoin.
Well, now that we've got several hundred people piling in and we've got a good time, let me at least introduce Troy. And even if he's not ready to speak yet, first of all, he doesn't need any introduction. Everyone knows who Troy Cross is. Um, yep. But with that, I'll give a brief introduction for those who, for whatever reason, just sold their XRP and just realized that Bitcoin's a better world, and so they're learning who Troy is. First of all, Troy is someone who I know many of you have read my book, who I thank in the back of my book because he was single-handedly responsible. Well, him and Daniel Batten were responsible for helping me as a California guy in Hollywood understand how Bitcoin mining actually is beneficial to the environment. Like that was something that was really hard for me to square when I first got into Bitcoin. And Troy put it together. I think I heard him on an early um, Peter McCormick podcast. I don't know when it was, 2017, 2018, when he first, it was like his debut. And I was like, oh, wow, this is just incredible. Like whether Satoshi planned it that way or it just ended up being that way, maybe is an interesting discussion. But that helped me understand it and helps me speak to my lefty friends. Um, but yeah, Troy. So Troy is a fellow at the BTC Policy Institute. Obviously, look at his profile; he's not a gal, so everyone knows he's a fellow. And he's a philosopher. I believe he still teaches over at Reed. And yeah, when it comes to mining, when it comes to its impact on the environment and energy and eating up waste and um, all of the good stuff that we know mining does, rather than the misinformation and disinformation that is often spread. Troy has kind of been on the front line of that, and so he has been one of my go-tos to help me process and synthesize. the data versus what people are saying. And I often think about that. I think about, how everyone talks about everyone should run a node, but I don't hear everyone should have a miner, and I know why. And for some people it doesn't make economical sense, but maybe it does make economical sense in the larger network. I don't know, but these are all things we can talk about. Troy has recently been writing some pieces, and I know he speaks a lot. So I'd love to know, Troy, what's on your mind, what you think of do the current markets scare miners, or does, the difficulty adjustment and the incentives just sort of
Terrence,
adjust and take
I
care of
think
that?
you didn't you
What? No,
miss.
I'm doing a
Oh,
soliloquy right
am I
now. Now's when
interrupting
you
you?
shut. Whoop, zip.
My oh
This
my
is
gosh,
where
I'm
duct
so
tape
sorry,
goes
sir.
over that pie hole.
I didn't even hear you. Get some of the hostage tape. I'm telling you. No,
Okay.
I think you missed musician. Am I wrong in that, Troy?
Yes, he plays the piano on Twitter. You can see his hands, but
Oh,
I don't
it's
know if it's him.
beautiful. It
I
is
haven't seen that
beautiful.
it's
Let's see
him.
the
I
hands. Yeah,
don't
you see the
trust,
hands.
verify. I haven't
Exactly.
verified.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, Troy Cross. Welcome to Bitcoin Today.
Welcome, Troy.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's a real
Sorry,
privilege,
I love playing
and
with the soundboard. Go ahead.
it's a privilege. And I have to say, I'm not a finance guy, and so it's really nice it's really nice to get some answers about what's going on. It's kind of an unprecedented situation we're in, and it's hard to understand. Like you said, it's kind of nice to watch from the sidelines in Bitcoin, uh, and it's kind of nice to have something exciting again, because a lot of my addiction to this whole space is just something interesting happening. You can't say it's not interesting what's going on right now. But yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm happy to talk about anything people want to
Awesome.
ask me about or talk about today. I don't have a set agenda. I have written some pieces recently about the future of Bitcoin mining in Bitcoin Magazine, latest print edition. I'm also, one other thing is that I started this nonprofit called the Nakamoto Project, and uh, we just completed our second study on Bitcoin adoption in America. We surveyed 3,500 people in the U.S. Got a feel for who owns Bitcoin, how is ownership changing, what are people's attitudes towards Bitcoin, that sort of thing. I'm not in a position to talk definitively about that data because we're still crunching it. But anyway, that's another project that I'm involved in with Bitcoin. You can also ask me questions about uh, philosophy, of which I teach, or or Bach, which is the main music thing that I like. But
Ooh,
yeah, I'm open to whatever y'all want to talk about.
Well, let's start
awesome.
with this, Troy, because I know this is what most people want to talk about. You notoriously and famously purchased a pair of socks for 5 Bitcoin. How are those socks doing these days?
Oh, it's so much worse than that. I didn't just purchase one pair of socks for 5 Bitcoin. Uh, I have a drawer full of socks that I've purchased for 5 Bitcoin each pair.
You're kidding me.
No, uh, there. I'm in my bedroom right now. That drawer. I'm looking at it right as we speak. Most of those socks are, and I wear them every day all winter. Most of them are in great shape. They're just starting to like thin out on the bottom, but they're the best socks I've ever had, and they held up incredibly well. Yeah, I bought
They
them from
better
a.
be. They're $1 million socks. Hey guys, the professor is in. It is the professor hours. So take full advantage. Get your hand up. Have your questions. Troy, no pressure or anything. Usually these things just kind of evolve and it's more just the community asking questions. We can take 180-degree turns quite often during these spaces and stuff too. So I'm glad we started with socks. It's brilliant. I also think we'll probably get to the event up in Oregon. Even though I'm an Oregon boy, I'm still waiting, standing by my mailbox, waiting for my invite right now. Anyway, I don't see who had their
We've
hand up.
got, that's because you're jibber jabbing. So
My bad.
Dombe's got his
Thank
hand
you,
up.
Daddy.
Then we're going to go to Punchy and then Nikolai. Dom, let's start with our resident firefighter.
Good morning, Dom. Great to see you.
Morning. I'm going to steer. Hey, great to see you guys. I'm going to steer away from the stocks. Troy, I'm going to go straight to mining. And California, they embarked on this public private energy transition. A lot of it's backed by investment from the pension fund, et cetera. You have a change of the administration. The private side of that public private partnership They're pulling the eject button. They're doubling, tripling down on drill, baby, drill, oil and gas. How does Bitcoin fill the gap there on a private side for that partnership to salvage what is a pretty heavy investment from the state towards energy transition?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's I don't know the details of that deal, but I know the general situation in California, and it's a shit show. It's a massive boondoggle. The transmission costs in California are extremely high, and they'll say that's because of weather events, and that's partly true. But transmission is becoming the key component of what people pay for power, transmission and distribution, rather than generation. California is also producing more solar than it needs during certain times of the day. So adding solar to the California grid doesn't really make a lot of sense. They already have enough solar when they have it. So I think the situation is that people are paying really high rates in California. It varies across the state, but it's like 46 cents a kilowatt hour in San Diego, which is insane. And at the same time, they have power surpluses during the peak solar production. So what's needed to fix that is consume the excess power locally, and also, if you can, free yourself from that grid. Achieve energy independence and sovereignty if you can, because those rates are only going to go up. So I am a big fan of solar myself because it provides sovereignty. In a situation like this where someone's going to rip you off with nearly 50 cents a kilowatt hour price. And by the way, the projections are just that's going to increase forever and ever. The projections are not that that's going to drop. So if you lock in energy independence for yourself now or in the near future, you can lock in your power price for, provided you can get a loan, provided you have debt that's cheap, which who knows now, but you can lock in your power price for the next, 25, 30 years, which is how long the guarantees on those run. And then you can you can actually use the excess power yourself with Bitcoin mining. So I'm working with some folks who do that actually in California. And it's a tough market. It's fiat ultimately. It depends on a lot of fiat factors, whether net metering 3.0 is as bad as 2.0. It's looking better. So you might just be better off feeding the grid. They might pay for you. It might be that the cost of power doesn't go up because the government intervenes and just subsidizes it because it's getting out of control and people complain. And also, it depends on hash price. How much does Bitcoin mining pay? Well, we've just touched the zeta hash for the first time. Hash rate is insanely high, and that means mining is paying less than ever before. So, the economics of mining are pretty bad right now. Honestly, they're pretty bad. They're building in a lot of hope about where the Bitcoin price is going, and you really shouldn't do it unless you have a lot excess or free power, which there is some of in California. But the situation is complicated, and to actually answer your question, it would be to dive into the spreadsheets. I've just kind of given you the high level overview: shit show grid, shit show regulatory system, hash price in the dirt, and uncertainty everywhere. But the bigger picture is I don't think the grid's going to fix itself anytime soon. And there's a spiral that happens once people start to opt out of the grid and they don't pay rates to the system anymore because they're buying power from themselves, from their own roof. What happens then is that the fixed cost of the grid is spread over fewer people as people with means opt out by providing their own power. And that means there's rates go up even faster. And I think when we hit that tipping point, and we may have already hit it in California, but we will hit it soon because solar's not getting any more expensive. It's getting cheaper and cheaper. And batteries are also getting a lot cheaper. So once we hit that point where the rates are so absurdly high that you're better off making your own power and going self-sovereign, we see defection from the grid and the total collapse of the energy system in California. And that's when I think the state steps in and saves everybody, but that requires funny money, right? Because they can't really afford that. So it's good. There's going to be like draconian regulations, government interference. The shit show will get even shittier.
Hey, that makes sense. My two takeaways from that, Troy. Number one, my bid axe probably not hitting a block today, so I'm going to live with that and move forward. Number two, though, what you're saying about the transmission lines matches my experience, because I remember it was like a year ago. I was on a call, like a community neighborhood call with SoCal Edison, and a representative from SoCal Edison said, even if we dedicated every resource and got additional government funding, we would never be able to catch up with the degradation of transmission lines in the state. Like, we're chasing a runaway train that we could never catch up on. And so, it was kind of like the takeaway was like, just get ready to deal with it, because there is no way we are going to replace outdated transmission lines or update that whole situation in the state. That was the takeaway. All right, cool. Well, thanks,
Yep.
man. It's a lot of good
Yeah.
food for thought.
One last comment. I do have a friend in California who believes California will do that, but they think it'll do that after this entire fiat system collapses and we start rebuilding on Bitcoin, and then we invest in SMRs and we redo the grid. But they don't think that'll happen until the total collapse of the existing system. Yeah, given the existing system, I think you're right.
Punchy, did you have a question for Troy?
No, Troy, for a guy who paid that much for stocks, I'm curious, if you could talk just a little bit about your arc of your experience with Bitcoin. When did you get in? When did you really think you started to understand it? And when did you make the move to mining and things like that? I think people will find that interesting.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I'll keep it brief. But I found my girlfriend at the time, who's my wife now, gave me an article in 2011, spring of 2011, and about Bitcoin. And I was like, that's really interesting, because I used to teach at Yale University, and a lot of my students went to work for Wall Street, and I didn't know anything about money at the time, but I sort of figured out what was happening and that it was unfair. And then 2008 happened, and I became obsessed with basically how does finance work and how does money work. So I was completely primed for it. I was also interested in e-gold, and I watched that fail. So I was kind of like the perfect candidate. So as soon as I got this article, I was like, this is interestingly different from e-gold and wouldn't fail in the way that e-gold failed, but it could solve our problems of money and the injustices of our system of money. And I found the white paper on the same day. I think the white paper was the second thing I read after some Yahoo article on Bitcoin. Found the white paper, didn't understand a lot of it. And I had all of our laptops mining Bitcoin by the end of the day. You could just mine on the original Bitcoin QT software. Mining was just a button on your laptop. And I found the Bitcoin Talk forum, which was the only place you could really learn anything about Bitcoin. And then over the next, I would say, 3 weeks, my wife didn't really see me at all, except to bring me food in the basement. And I just consumed the Bitcoin Talk forums. And, I'm a philosopher. I'm used to the academic world. I mean, also it was a tough time of the semester, and I was happy to have an escape from my actual job. So it's this furtive, don't do my work, but learn about this new cool thing. And of course, I built up miners for myself with graphics cards, which was state of the art at that time, and got them up and running. I wasn't a technical person, so I asked people for help. I also tipped them in Bitcoin. I remember tipping somebody a couple Bitcoin to help me set up my miners because I was stuck, couldn't optimize them. But I bought things. I wanted it to be peer-to-peer cash, right? I didn't just buy the stocks. We had a little kind of Craigslist that was for Bitcoiners at the time. I bought stuff on there, like Jam and little whatever people were selling. It was kind of like Etsy. Eventually, Expedia came to take Bitcoin, and so all of my academic travel I paid for with Bitcoin, like the flights and hotel. Overstock.com, their CEO was a Bitcoiner, Patrick Byrne. I bought everything I could from Overstock. I switched over to Overstock from like Amazon or whatever. I mean, I was all into, buying and selling, paying, and I did peer-to-peer trading in Portland on localbitcoin.info, and that's how I met people. I didn't have a community that wasn't apart from the online community, and then just meeting people in coffee shops or bank lobbies is what I like to trade in because of the security. And all those times we would wait for confirmations. We would wait for like 6 confirmations. So I just hang out with somebody who wanted to buy Bitcoin from me or sell Bitcoin to me, and we'd talk for an hour. And that was basically the old-fashioned equivalent of this space, that we're in right now. It was just Bitcoin just struck me as like it struck all of you. Freedom technology, a way to make money fair, a way that I could participate in the future of the financial system of the world. Potentially, it also seemed like an experiment that could fail easily. And even Gavin, who took over from Satoshi, said it's an experiment. It could go to zero, and probably will go to zero, but it has tremendous upside potential. So it was a financial thing, but it wasn't really a financial thing. It was about creating a better world, and I could be a part of it, and that was super appealing. The mining part, I shared this, Terence, I'm glad that my show with Peter was helpful to you. I shared this with Peter. I did my own back of the envelope math on mining in 2011 while I had my miners up and running in my own basement. And I was mining multiple Bitcoin per day on 2 little machines. I don't know how much power that would take today, but I don't even want to think about it. But I did my own math on how much power Bitcoin mining would use if the market cap were equal to the market cap of gold, which was kind of like where we were aiming at the time, which seemed utterly ridiculous, but doesn't seem at all ridiculous anymore. But this was the first epoch where the subsidy for mining was 50 Bitcoin per block. Now it's 3.125 Bitcoin per block. So every 10 minutes, somebody's getting 50 Bitcoin. And at that rate, less than half of the Bitcoin had been mined. So the ratio between market cap and miner revenue was very, very different. And I figured out, and also the machine efficiency was far less. I figured out that it would basically be astronomical levels of electricity that would be incentivized by mining if Bitcoin were to reach the market cap of gold. And I realized that would be a disaster for the energy system and for emissions. Basically everybody would stop doing everything else with wherever there's an outlet, and they would just start hashing instead. And that led me to stop mining and give my miners away to a local nonprofit in Portland. And it kind of put a damper on my enthusiasm for Bitcoin, thinking that mining could destroy the environment. And it took me many years to deal with that. And why I came public in that podcast with Peter and earlier on Twitter was I had worked through those issues. I came to see mining as potentially really beneficial to the energy transition, to energy abundance and clean energy. I also had an idea for how if you wanted to hold Bitcoin in a carbon neutral way, how you could do that with no carbon credits or funky accounting or anything weird, just by mining and owning Bitcoin. So that's what brought me into the space. And that, how it is, you get on social media and the next thing you know, you're involved in like 1,000 little arguments. And you meet people reach out to you. Pretty soon I found myself just meeting with people all day who were entrepreneurs in the space, or they just saw my thing and they had some interesting thing they want to say, or they wanted to correct me in things I thought were true, but I was wrong about on the energy side. And I just started learning a ton, meeting people, making friends. I've never learned so much in my life than it's been 4 years. The last 4 years has been like an insane learning curve, and it just keeps going. Bitcoin remains exciting. It remains the single best thing you can do to influence the world or be a part of a world historical moment. It's still the coolest idea I've ever found. I'm a philosopher. Satoshi's idea is a philosophical idea, and it's still the coolest idea I have ever found. So I'm just rolling. I'm just rolling now. I wish I hadn't bought those
Wow.
socks, but uh,
Those damn socks. Not just a
It's all good.
philosopher and a musician, but also a romantic. I think we just heard the breakup story with Bitcoin, and he couldn't stay away. The allure was too much, and he came back. Thankfully.
And
Thank
what an
God you're back.
amazing story. And just a reminder, because I mean, Troy's an academic and a philosopher, and he thinks through things. He's, I would assume he's less rational and emotional as some of us are, and yet he took the time. He humbled himself and learned. And I love that you said, Troy, that like you've never learned so much as you did in that 4-year period. And I think every Bitcoiner, the true Bitcoiners who really understand Bitcoin, have gone through the same thing. It just turns their world upside down because everything is not what we thought it was. That was fantastic. Hey, Nikolai, I'm not sure if you still had your hand up. If not, T Swizzle did.
No, I'm Ray. A big fan of yours, Troy. And I wonder if you could riff off your um, survey research. And the reason why I find that research so interesting is because it is often counter to the perception that maybe we have of ourselves as Bitcoiners. It's counter to the sort of the tribal things we see at the national political level, where you have some of the prominent Democrats, with their anti-crypto army, and you have Republicans embracing it. So it looks like it's this, could be this polarized subject matter, but your survey debunks that pretty profoundly, and speaks to how it's really a broad-based constituency and a broad-based adoption. And I just think that the implications to that are fascinating. And I'd love to hear your take on all that.
yeah, thank you. Like I said, we've just completed the second round. We did the same survey. We enhanced it in some ways. We tried to deal with some of the criticisms that people threw at us and shore those up with special questions. But the headline from last year was that Bitcoin is for everybody. It's like this conference, which, by the way, August 1st in Portland, and you should come. Terence will be there. I'll be there. I will have the data and fully present it at that conference. The report will be out, and I'll go through it in detail. What we found the first year was that there was almost no political correlation with Bitcoin ownership. We were shocked. We looked at the data a gazillion different ways and a gazillion different times. We couldn't avoid the conclusion that Bitcoin ownership cuts across politics. It doesn't match what you see on Twitter. It doesn't match what you see in the media. It doesn't match what you see in politics. It doesn't match anything except all the survey results. And what's the quality of our data? Well, we paid I don't know, $8 a head or something for this data to be representative from a professional firm, representative of the US population. Our data pretty much matched the census distribution along all sorts of lines: education, race, gender, politics, geography, urban, rural, everything we could find. We pretty closely matched the census distribution of America. And we also had attention checks, so we know people weren't just kind of filling circles in or clicking, because we had questions designed to trip people up if they were doing that. And we threw out everybody who missed one of those questions. So we think it's good data. And what it shows us is last year, Bitcoiners are slightly more radical in their politics than the general public. Like they're slightly more very liberal and slightly more very conservative. But the vast majority of Bitcoiners are still moderate, and the vast majority of Americans are moderate. And what we saw was that the things that matter for Bitcoin ownership is, do you know about Bitcoin? There's a incredible correlation between knowledge of Bitcoin and ownership of Bitcoin, like super strong. And likewise, do you believe Bitcoin is a good thing and Bitcoiners are good people? If you think Bitcoin is a good thing, you own it. If you don't own it. Do you trust it? And trust for us breaks down to multiple components, but one of those components is, do you trust the Bitcoin blockchain to be accurate? Just to be an accurate record of transactions. And we found that if you trust it to be accurate, you own it. And if you don't, you don't. But also we found that people had about an equal amount of trust in that as they did in that it would hold value over time. That it's just an accurate record and that it will hold value. People were about the same on those two questions. For me, those are very different questions. The one requires you to speculate about value, and the other one is like a no-brainer. Bitcoin is the most accurate record on the planet. So told me that a lot of people don't understand Bitcoin, and do you think Bitcoin is useful? If you think Bitcoin is useful, you own it. If you don't think it's useful, you don't own it. Those measures like vastly outstripped any demographic measure in terms of predicting Bitcoin ownership statistically. The other thing we found was, this is not going to be surprising, Bitcoin is dudes. Like, you're so much more likely to own Bitcoin if you're a guy. That one is not misleading when you look around at the conferences. That's pretty accurate. Also, age. Larry Lepard, like we were looking at our data, and there are almost no old people who own Bitcoin, like almost no old people. And we like looking at the dots on the graph. And we're like, there's Larry, there's Greg Foss, because there's just so few people that
When you
have it.
say old, what are we talking?
Okay, this was one of the critiques of our survey last year, because we just asked a simple question: do you own Bitcoin? And that could mean a lot of different things. It could mean a lot of different ways of holding it, and even the word Bitcoin could be interpreted to mean crypto.
No, Troy, I'm just trying to figure out if I'm old or not. I don't know. I don't know what
Oh,
category I fit into
old.
here.
I thought you said hold.
Old,
Okay.
yes.
Uh,
I feel old right now, and I'm like,
I would
okay,
say
sorry.
In our data from last year, 45 was really, it was like 30 to 45 was where all the ownership clustered. It was a little bit less under 30. It was just
Damn it.
dropped off after 45, and after 50, it was like a
Oh
cliff.
God, I'm
And
old. I'm
anybody at
old.
60, like there was nobody who owned it over 60, basically. So
You aren't old, you're rare, by the way. Let's just
Oh,
interject.
thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm over
That's a
50
glass
as
half
well. I mean,
full versus a more pessimistic view. Thank you.
but if you
I appreciate that.
go another decade, it's pretty much non-existent. And make of that what you will. This year's data, and I can't speak to this year's data in depth, but I will say it showed the same thing, although it was a little bit different on the men and women side. Women were there was some of the female owners were a little bit older this year, not over 50, but in that 40s range. It was pretty heavy, and also we had more female ownership, like under 30, than we had last year. But the main trend, and I'll give this away from the study, was that despite everything that's happened between last year's study and this year's study, politically, with Trump embracing Bitcoin, and we gave the survey just after the strategic Bitcoin reserve was announced, but before the executive order came. That's when we collected our data. So it's a little bit confusing. It was before, because the executive order was awesome, but the strategic reserve that was announced just before on Twitter mentioned XRP and ADA and Solana. So we asked about have you heard of the strategic crypto reserve in our survey? But anyway, it was in that period that we asked, think about how much water went under the bridge politically. Trump spoke at the conference. We had an election. We basically had a lot of Republicans crowing about Bitcoin and crypto. We had Democrats remaining silent or saying negative things. And still, it's not politicized. Ownership remains unpoliticized. When we went to attitudes, we saw a slight shift in the conservative direction. Slight, but statistically significant. The extreme liberals are more negative on Bitcoin than they were last year. the extreme conservatives aren't really any more positive, but the liberals dropped off a bit. So it took a little bit of toll, the people who listen to MSNBC or whatever, but not a big one. It still doesn't compare to knowledge, morality, use, utility. Our overall message is still there. And this year we really dove into what ownership means. Like how many people hold Bitcoin in cold storage versus hold it through an exchange versus hold it as part of an ETF versus through a family office versus through a spouse. Because we were wondering about all of those things. So we broke down ownership in detail, and then we're diving into each one of those forms of ownership to see if we get a unique profile that pops out. Like, okay, maybe it's politically neutral if you own Bitcoin, but what about if you got it like on a cold card? Like, are you more likely to be a libertarian then?
Troy, we're just for reference. I think Terence posted the report
Oh,
you're
cool.
speaking of up in the nest. Just for FYI, for anybody who's interested, as I was. Sounds like there's going to be some baby boomers rolling over in their graves when they find out that their kids rolled their beautiful assets that they thought were so great, gold and whatnot, into Bitcoin. So, sorry, keep your hands up, guys, if you do have questions. Every time we do a minimize or something on our screens, the hands go away. So I can't remember whose hand was up.
We've
So I
got
apologize. I
T
apologize
Swizzle.
for cutting you off there, Troy, but there was some hands up in the room. Go ahead, Terrence, take me away.
Yeah, T Swizzle, and then it looks like British joined us. But go ahead, T
Oh yeah,
Swizzle.
Tomer's off vacation. He's back with us too. So Tomer, you've got an invite to fly up here and
Yeah,
up
lots
on
of great
stage.
Bitcoiners.
Yeah,
First names start with T. That's true. Troy, Tomer. Oh, okay. Anyways,
Torin.
Taylor.
Hey, Troy, great to have you here. I've been in Bitcoin since early 2013, so it's great to hear your experience because it just I remember some of those days. I'm from Utah this last half of my life, and we had Patrick Byrne overstock there in Utah, and so we had kind of a little bubble that kind of rode through that. And also, you didn't mention, but Tiger Direct, I remember they did it.
Yep.
I bought a solid state drive from them
Yeah, there was
with Bitcoin.
also Amagi Metals was also in Utah. They sold gold for Bitcoin.
Yeah, yeah. My buddy, I don't know if you remember, there was a documentary called Life on Bitcoin, where he lived his first 90 days of marriage on Bitcoin. So Austin Craig, and they're the ones that introduced me to Bitcoin back in early 2013. And so we've been kind of a tight knit little Utah community until around 2020 when I discovered Bitcoin Twitter. I didn't even know, but we kind of had our we kind of had that same experience where there wasn't anywhere to learn about it. We just kind of figured things out ourselves. We were already Ron Paul libertarians, and we kind of thought it was the next world reserve, but it was.
The internet in India is sketchy at best. So
how
we lost
how
you for a minute.
Bitcoin is under unique scrutiny compared to like other innovations and technologies. And I also had seen you post before about potential trade-offs of a strategic Bitcoin reserve. And so my question is, what do you think is the most overlooked long-term consequence of governments treating Bitcoin differently? So say they're treating it as a neutral asset, a neutral internet money versus a controlled asset like all the others. What do you think that does? What's maybe an overlooked long-term consequence of that?
Oh wow,
Do you have any ideas on that front?
that's a really great question, and I'm not sure I have anything unique to say about it. I will say I think that governments inevitably are going to use this technology, and we shouldn't. We can't. We can moan about it, but it's going to happen. It's permissionless, and we can't stop them from buying it, and we can't stop them from using it. That's been part of mass adoption includes governments. I think the danger they pose, and this is nothing original, it is once they say hold it as a reserve asset, and I do like the executive order that the Trump team put together, where they established a strategic Bitcoin reserve separate from the crypto stockpile with different directives for Bitcoin than for crypto. Like they're not selling their Bitcoin, whereas they can sell their crypto for Bitcoin. I was really impressed that Trump walked back the disastrous tweets about ADA and XRP in Solana, and he turned it into this really nice executive order, which is we couldn't have written a better one ourselves. Maybe
Yeah, I thought it was perfect. I thought it was
yeah,
perfect.
maybe some of us did write it. I don't know. I'm not saying, but I think it is just treated specially. But look, if we hold a ton of Bitcoin, if we say that Cynthia Lummis's bill passes and we stack 1 million Bitcoin, okay, in the U.S. and other nations do as well, then just think about how protocol changes go in that circumstance. You know, you propose something for the network. You know, we like it. It promotes freedom, but governments don't necessarily like it because it makes Bitcoin scale in a way that's private. So suppose we face that kind of a choice, and the devs like unify and rally around some kind of soft fork that helps Bitcoin scale in a private way. Those governments can weigh in and say, well, if Bitcoin forks, you know, if it forks in some way that it's like a hard fork, we will not buy the fork. We will not be buying we'll be dumping the anti-government fork, the freedom fork, and we'll be continue to buy the OFAC compliant fork. And their economic force in that setting would be a lot greater if they hold a lot of Bitcoin and if their government involves Bitcoin, right? Same goes for BlackRock. Same goes for Coinbase. Same goes for other large centralized custodians of Bitcoin. Some of our goal at the Nakamoto Project is we're a Bitcoin education nonprofit, but it's to maintain the spirit of Bitcoin widely among plebs, you know, because somebody's got to be looking out for the freedom aspect of Bitcoin. We can't rely on governments to do that, and governments will have say and they'll have sway. So every time, you know, somebody is thrilled about an announcement of the government acquiring Bitcoin, there's a part of me that's like, yeah, and then their influence in any kind of fork war, I'll probably be on the other side from that government. So I've got mixed feelings about it.
Yeah, if I could kind of just follow up and comment on that. So I thought through that once BlackRock came on the scene, because that was an immediate worry of mine is, uh, if they decide to fork it and have like their ESG compliant chain or some stupid crap like that, right? Like, then what does that mean? What's the implication of that? And I was around during the Bcash fork. I held on to Bcash for too long because I wasn't sure about Roger Ver's rhetoric about how it's the real Bitcoin, quote unquote, and so I just you know I could have double the Bitcoin that I have today, basically, but I don't because I just held on to both of them for
Yeah,
a long
same
time.
here.
And I've come to the conclusion that I would love it personally if BlackRock wanted to try to fork it, because I would dump all my fork coin immediately, and I think I'd be dumping it on a bunch of noobs in Bitcoin, but I think I would benefit personally from that. So I don't know.
I think that it's you're exactly right. At this point, if they announce like ESG fork of Bitcoin or whatever, we would all dump it and we'd laugh and it would be hilarious. But I feel like there's a threshold over which once crossed, like once enough governments stack enough Bitcoin, and they're large enough buyers of Bitcoin, the calculus maybe starts to change. You might dump their coin on ideological grounds, or you might dump it because you're a really long range strategic thinker and you realize that if they truly control it, it's not freedom money, it's not really neutral, and therefore it won't be valuable in the long term. So you might also dump their fork for that reason. But I think in the short term, it would get ugly once we're over a certain threshold of adoption.
Jesse, did you have your hand up? And then let's welcome Kelly Kellum to the stage after you, if you've got a question, Kelly.
Yeah, what's up, guys? What's up, Kelly? What's up, Terence? And hey, Troy, man, this has been incredible. Really been enjoying the conversation. Um, I wanted to get into the philosophy a bit, if you're okay with that. I studied sociology and economics and the philosophical. I also consider myself a bit of a philosopher, and that side of it for me, along with spiritual. I know Tomer's in the audience, or maybe he's on stage. There's a spiritual aspect to it, and I thought maybe we could talk about it from the perspective of the last topic, right? Which is like government control. And I know you run this nonprofit. Maybe if you can talk about individual sovereignty and the importance of self-custody, and because I agree with you, the game theory is there. We want the governments to pick it up, but we don't want to lose the purpose of Bitcoin, which is that individual sovereignty aspect. So once again, man, great convo, but I'd love to get your thoughts on all that.
Yeah, I think Bitcoin has always been a marriage of freedom and value. Freedom go up and number go up, and those two have been paired, and that's why it's worked. Like there's a lot of freedom technology that cypherpunks create that nobody adopts because it's clunky and nobody wants to use it. Bitcoin was special. Satoshi did something special because he combined a freedom philosophy and a self-sovereignty philosophy with self-interest in terms of the value of Bitcoin appreciating. It's absolute fucking genius. And it's why we're all here today talking about it. It could have just been just another protocol that some coders did, but we're here because we're talking about markets this morning. Bitcoin is relevant to our lives because it represents a store of value and a medium of exchange, uh, uh, as well as being a philosophical idea. But the danger is that those two eventually come apart in some way. And I was always a skeptic back in those early days of Bitcoin Talk forums. I'm so glad my identity is not known from them because I was always throwing out FUD, and it was usually uninformed. I'm not proud of it, right? But I mean, my perspective back then was like, wait a minute, you're saying you're going to overthrow the world's financial system and disrupt governments and banks, the most powerful the most powerful forces on the planet. And you're going to do this with a little ragtag community movement. I remember doing a calculation at the time, like of how much it would cost a 51% attack Bitcoin mining with in terms of Goldman senior VP bonuses. And it was like one bonus could attack the Bitcoin network for a substantial amount of time, at that time period. And I was like, this is just crazy. Like we're trying to take on a system which is going to defend itself. If it's actually attacked, it's going to fight back. And how do we think we can overthrow it? And so my old self is just incredulous that we are actually here and that we actually and that we have nation states stacking Bitcoin, mining Bitcoin. We got the Treasury Secretary talking about how Bitcoin is a store of value, and we've got Larry Fink saying it's a flight to safety. Like this is absolutely bonkers. We fucking did it. We did it. It's like was this wild? Okay, uh, but will the freedom go up and the self sovereignty? The vision that drew me in. I mean, I spoke at BlackRock, right? And I'm at BlackRock, and I'm like, damn. The reason I got into Bitcoin was because I thought I would put all of you all out of work. Like I wanted to undermine this rotten Wall Street machine, not like join it. Like what? How did I end up here? Um, but it's like that's the danger, right? How do we hold on to the Bitcoin's being hope? It's being love. It's being community. It's being you know, guys meeting in a coffee shop discussing how humans can organize themselves better in a fairer way. Like that sort of bottom up community, creative, empowering vision. I mean, for many of us, like I described my journey, learning a ton. We have the same story, right? You're kind of locked on the fiat hamster wheel of life where you're not really making a difference to the world even though you see that stuff is wrong and you feel helpless. And Bitcoin is like a mechanism whereby you can make a difference. You can be a part of a change to make a vastly better world for others and for yourself. And your whole perspective in life changes from being this passive recipient of other people's bullshit to someone whose thoughts get to manifest in reality. You want to change something, you can do it. And then it spills over into the rest of your life. You realize that you weren't as helpless as you thought, that already life affords you lots of opportunities for making a difference, right? You realize that you can think in the long term and you start taking care of your body. You realize that friendships are worth nurturing and investing in, family. So many of us been on this road. Tomer speaks beautifully about it. I'm not going to add to it. How do we bootstrap that? How do we maintain that along with, rather than just like, okay, Bitcoin is like a BlackRock government thing now, and the rich people are in charge. The people who are always in charge are now in charge of this thing. That is our challenge, right? There's no reason we have to cede that control rather than bootstrapping Bitcoin's philosophy, cede back the control, and then retreat back to a pre-Bitcoin philosophy. We don't have to do that. But the threat is always out there. And yeah, that's part of the Nakamoto Project's mission is to scale the freedom along with the number.
Man, that rant was beautiful. I'm going to clip that later and share, Troy. Thank you for that. Thank you for that question, Jesse. Kelly, I wasn't sure if you had a question, but if not, our other resident philosopher has jumped on stage. Tomer, good to have you back. I know you've been on vacation.
Yeah, I have some thoughts I'd like to share, and then a question for Troy as well. Thank you for another incredible space, and I think the event horizon in history of money systems, government, culture, and access to freedom. I think there's such a beautiful thing happening here regarding Bitcoin, and actually the fact that the vast majority of the world completely second guessing Bitcoin from the start. Only the very tech forward cypherpunks early on, basically this early access to retail at a dramatic level first, it really serves to benefit what the path forward is going to be. Even Larry Fink now calling Bitcoin a flight to safety, whereas for many years was calling it an index for money laundering. It shows this sort of tidal shift that we've seen in the markets. Now the benefit I think of that is the fact that we had the front end loading of the Bitcoin user base adoption being from retail first, which is probably, to my knowledge, among the first in history, other than when gold was just, accessible to people, but that was still a top level access point to, in over history. But we had retail first in this with different moral objectives, in getting involved with Bitcoin. And now we're on this stage. This really just points to how beautiful Bitcoin is. Now we're at the stage with global adoption on the horizon already taking place with El Salvador and Bhutan, and what we're seeing with a report that just came out with Van Eck trading energy, settling it in Bitcoin, which is what? Well, they clearly, in governments and large corporations, have this hard money perspective, but also on a government international level. Okay, let's stop this foreign interference and manipulation of money systems. Let's go to something that's agnostic to all the bullshit here. This is on equal ground for everybody. But then we're at this stage right now with the new administration resettling or rebalancing of what's happening on the world stage. And Bitcoin is, finally at a substantial portion of ability, mind share, the awareness of it and what it could be used for in so many different moral reasonings, objectives, whether it's just to make money or to store money, store value, or to have a piece of digital real estate in the next era, which is, the cyber world. But then I guess the question is, I throw to Troy, how do we reconcile moving forward maintaining, are we at a potential inflection point of retail still being able to maintain, I don't want to say control, but a decently substantive portion of the self-custody? Is this going to be something that potentially is going to move into this next era if retail doesn't act to where it is large in part basically owned by corporations on the majority, and retail is basically just grasping for crumbs there, because there's so many different options and pathways that this could move forward. And like, how do we make sense of this, reconcile it, and also do our part?
That was a great rant. Loved all of that. And I have to say too, I think we're still early. I think we're still early. And I had a feeling. I just went to this BPI event in DC recently, and we had 6 congressmen there. Talking about strategic Bitcoin reserve. Uh, the vibe was pretty bullish, I gotta say, and the price action doesn't reflect the shift that's happened. It's like people don't actually believe or understand the executive order and what it means. Treasury is looking for ways to buy Bitcoin, folks. They're going to buy some Bitcoin. So, and this current uncertainty and Bitcoin still being perceived as a risk asset, it's great. It's great in the sense that Bitcoin dumps and we get a chance to buy it. Despite being so freaking early, I'm not rich. If you come and try to steal my Bitcoin, wrench attack me or whatever, you're mostly just going to get the socks, folks. I'm stacking. I'm buying. I'm buying Bitcoin. Yes, I think there's chance for retail to get in because it's like people haven't grokked it yet. When I look at Google Trends, there's kind of burnout on Bitcoin. It's not spiking like it has previously. I think it's due to a number of factors. People think they know what Bitcoin is. When we ask about awareness of Bitcoin, the number's like 97% or something like that of our respondents say they know about Bitcoin. They don't know about it deeply, but they're just not curious enough to learn, honestly. So,
Hey, Troy, my favorite is when somebody says they know about Bitcoin and the type of Bitcoin they have is Ethereum. I'm like, okay, we're not there yet.
absolutely. And actually, something we did in this survey was we said, bearing in mind that we're not talking about any other cryptocurrency than Bitcoin, do you own Bitcoin? Like we're very explicit about, we may have listed a cryptocurrency or two. And that number for ownership, we didn't use that qualifier last time. It went down a little bit, but then when we asked them, do you own in form A, form B, form C, forms like hardware wallet, exchange, whatever, we found a higher number again, a bit confusing. But to Tomer, to your point, I was kind of blown away by our hardware wallet number in the US. It was way higher than I expected, way higher. Owning Bitcoin on a hardware wallet is actually pretty common. And that gave me a lot of hope. I think we have, it's close to 4%, not 4% of Bitcoin owners, 4% of Americans. It's close to that own Bitcoin on a hardware device. Don't quote me. We got to run the analysis more carefully, but I almost didn't believe the number when I saw it. I started researching Ledger and Trezor's sales numbers to see whether that is even plausible, to look at who has the hardware wallet market share and whether they could really have sold that many. But I think it's a lot of Americans who do value self-custody right now and the ability to participate in the network. And so I think, how do we hold on to it? The narrative has, again, it's kind of surprising. The narrative has been all about institutional adoption, corporations holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet, bonds backed by Bitcoin, government adoption, sovereign wealth funds, retirement funds. That's the whole narrative. That's the narrative. And I think retail is a part of that, but indirectly, not directly. And the Google searches are low. But this thing that gives me hope is the incredible hardware sales number or ownership number. And I think it's up to us, right? We generated this excitement. We're on a space. I look at the last cycle. I think it started with Clubhouse. Last cycle was COVID. People are home. Stimulus checks. Clubhouse. and then it moved to Twitter Spaces when that cropped up, and Twitter, right? And we don't have that quite yet, although this space is pretty darn good. But the conferences we're doing, like the one I'm here to plug in Portland on August 1st, those didn't really exist. Eddie, who's in the space below and organizing the conference, is doing the right thing. Bitcoin is for everybody. It's on us to reach out to others and bring them in to keep the spirit of Bitcoin a pleb spirit and a pleb movement, right? Bitcoin is nothing more than this code and us. So do I have hope for it? Yes. Do I see countervailing trends? Yes. I think we just have to step up.
Just a real quick correction. Troy mistakenly said Bitcoin is for everybody. He meant everyone. The Bitcoin is for everybody is a different soft forked conference. So just so you end up at the right one. Matthew McConaughey, I see you had your hand up, and then Dom Bay.
Hey, this conversation's been incredible. It's really eye-opening. I think there's a lot that you can unpack and learn. And a lot of speakers were discussing and have brought up who's going to drive the bus, and our government's going to take over, and this is the end, a backdoor end to the decentralization, because it all ends up in the hands of the government. And look, it's true that eventually mining and things are probably going to end up hooked up next to nuclear reactors, and the government folks are going to be probably better at that. And some sort of public-private partnership is going to end up being the fate, I think, of a lot of the mining infrastructure, especially because securing block space is going to be a national security concern for all the countries, certainly our country. But why don't we put that aside for a second? Let's not forget the government spends our money. So even though they have economic energy, they are absolutely the cart and we are the horse. Like we the people all across the world are the ones creating this economic output. We're the ones creating the creative solutions. We are the force of everything. And Bitcoin represents the first time we've been able to take the output of all that work and pick it up and move it where we want permissionlessly without central third parties able to control it. And it's been around for 15 years. It's survived many market cycles. And now we have sovereign adoption, commercial adoption. We have commercial adoption in the sense of taking Bitcoin as payment, and we also have it in the sense of using it on balance sheets. We see companies using the Bitcoin strategy outperforming companies that don't in the equities markets. And then, of course, last but not least, like I just said, we have retail that will eventually truly awaken. And when they see how the fiat, cupboards have been robbed bare by the central bank gangsters, they're going to be very excited about the power of Bitcoin. So they may be last to wake up, but when they do, they're the ones with all the economic energy and all the cards, just like America in this tariff war. But side note, anyway, that's my rant.
I totally agree with the last part of that rant. The little aside that you didn't want to talk about, I slightly disagree with. And part of this piece that I just wrote for Bitcoin Magazine is about why I think Bitcoin mining goes distributed and global. And I do think governments, of course, will mine Bitcoin, and they'll mine potentially at a loss, and they'll potentially mine, as you said, for national security reasons, so that they can ensure access to the network. But I think that mining goes where the cheap energy is and where the heating needs are, and that is distributed by physics and by the demand for heat, and it is like small in scale. In the US, what's happening from what I see is every major miner except CleanSpark is becoming an AI company. They're becoming an energy and compute infrastructure companies, and that's just because AI is paying a lot more, and they're crowding out the miners in the US, even though right now the US hash rate is probably over 50% and 30% at least in a public and obvious way. I think that's going down over the future as Bitcoin scales down and spreads out over the world. If you want to read that argument, I make it at length in the latest Bitcoin magazine.
Let's go to the CEO and founder of Proof of Workforce, Dominic Bay.
Geez, Terence, that's a lot. Troy, hey, I'm a huge believer in what you were saying, that it depends on us at this point. I double checked just right now. Bitcoin is a top 10 asset by market cap right now, despite everything going on, right? And people feeling like, oh, it's a top 10 asset in the world. That narrative is set. The challenge we have now is all these, the mining thing you were mentioning, as far as like centralization of mining, whether it's hard forks. The narrative is super important. I was talking to Maddox at BitBlock Boom, and we often look at like Bitcoin art as just this fun kind of a thing. I think things like that are super important because when you listen to Larry Fink talk, he is very laser. That guy doesn't just say something on a whim like me and Terence get on a space and just, start firing off, right? He plans his comments very carefully, and his comments on Bitcoin are very pointed and laser focused on crafting a narrative of Bitcoin as a pristine digital asset, a store of value. You do not hear him mentioning Bitcoin network as being, freedom technology or something that could kind of free people from, right, the empire that he's built. So it is on us, it's on everyone in the space to remind people of the story. And that's story. That's Genesis. That's the narrative of why Bitcoin was created. That's Chancellor, on the verge of a second bailout. That's huge. And don't underestimate that if you're in the audience of simply, we try to get people to use Bitcoin and buy their coffee with it, but getting people to understand the narrative of Bitcoin, why it was created, massive. And that is going to be one of the biggest challenges we have, moving forward.
Absolutely. We have to tell the story, not just of Bitcoin's history, but how it is being used in the world today for human freedom. And nobody does this better than Alex Gladstein and his cast of characters, who are exactly the people who do use Bitcoin to promote human freedom. Um, Alex likes to say that dictators hate Bitcoin. It's bad for dictators. It's good for democracy. Um, I think ultimately we need to understand Bitcoin as a quintessentially American technology. If you think American ideals are about freedom and opportunity, in a way, Bitcoin exports American values to everybody in the world. It's impossible to control people when you can't control the money that they have, and it's easy to control people if you can control the money they have. And Larry Fink doesn't talk about that. We have to. You're absolutely right. That's very well said.
Hey, as I see we're getting close to 10 o'clock, Troy, I'm not sure when you need to jump, but maybe you can give us a preview or just a little clue of what you might be talking about at the Bitcoin is for Everyone conference. I think a lot of people in the space haven't known about that conference, or maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but I was really shocked to hear how well planned and the quality of speakers that are getting lined up there. So I'm really excited to be going there, and I was excited to learn that you'll be there.
Well, we're glad to have you. Portland is kind of a sleeper in the Bitcoin community, but people like Eddie are making it happen. This conference last year was awesome. Last year was the inaugural conference. It's not surprising you haven't heard about it because that was the first time we did it. It was Portland in summer is beautiful, and it was the most like Portlandy conference. We had couches in the main room and like lounge chairs, and it was just like I don't know how to describe it, quaint, and it was super well attended. At one point, we were over the limits in some room and for the fire code, and people had to come in and distribute the crowd better. Everybody was locked in. We had Jeff Booth. It was fantastic. If you're on the West Coast, Portland is an easy trip. You'll meet a lot of cool Bitcoiners, and enjoy the city. We got great food. What will I be talking about? I don't know yet. We haven't set my talk. I see Eddie's in the audience. We got to decide. I'm not sure.
Hey
Last year I
guys.
talked about energy with Margot Paez. I'd really like to. I'd like to do like a 15-minute presentation of what we found through the Nakamoto project, our latest data, and what it means for Bitcoin. That's what I'd like to talk about.
Troy,
Do I
can
need
we
to wear
get
suspenders and like grow a beard since it's in Portland, or like I want to fit in, Troy?
Hey Terrence, can we get the dates of the event and maybe get it up in the nest so that when people re-listen to this, like that's actually for me personally, I want to know the dates and the how to get
No,
tickets.
we're not gonna do that.
Yep,
Ah
not for you,
man,
sir. Beers,
Yeah.
dang!
burgers, food trucks, strip clubs. I
Give me the
think
dates. Give me the
Portland,
dates.
Oregon is number one in the nation in a lot of those categories, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, I
Trust.
just heard Portland has changed a lot, and I don't know. Troy lives up there.
Homelessness. Yeah, forgot that one.
Well, you're not up there. I'm asking Troy. Let's see what Troy says.
You
Yeah,
know,
Portland basically took a hit in during COVID and during the protests, the BLM protests, and it has yet to recover from that. And it's along the I-5 corridor, and I think all of the cities from San Diego, LA, San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, and Vancouver
Reading.
are all experiencing the same sort of migratory population of people who have issues. People who are unhoused and who have drug addiction issues and who have psychological issues and whatever. And yeah, has that made a difference in Portland? Yes, it has. Um, but that's like not all of Portland. That's a problem that all cities have. I wouldn't let it scare you away, certainly from this conference or from the city in general. Um, 1 hour from Portland, we have Mount Hood, which is year-round skiing. Uh, another hour and a half away, we have the coast, which is one of the most beautiful and dramatic coasts that you'll ever see. And I mean, and we have in between us and the coast, we have old growth forests in a in a moderate, temperate rainforest environment. So if you like natural beauty, you get struck by it all the time out here. I'm from Michigan. That's where I grew up, rural Michigan. I love rural Michigan, but just looking at like a peak covered with snow 50 miles away while I'm in like 80-degree weather and it's perfectly dry, it's quite special.
One of the few places you can surf, hunt, and fish within the same 2.5 hours.
Hey, Bitcoin is for everyone handle. I know you can't talk, but maybe you can put something in the nest. I was looking for something that was comprehensive that would give people a little breakdown and where they can buy tickets. And um, I think Eddie said the tickets were, I mean, they're under $200. They're pretty cheap. So
Terrence, are you going to dust off your surfboard and go hit Seaside Coast and get a little surf in?
yeah, I'm gonna surf. In fact, I'm gonna paddle all the way up to Portland because it's so close. I just looked on the map.
Oh, sorry, brother. You'd have to paddle upstream for that, unfortunately.
Oh, there's Eddie. Maybe Eddie can chime in and give us some info. Eddie, are you still in the station wagon with the kids heading to Wally World?
Currently driving right now. Yep.
We were just looking for some details on the conference. I don't know if and Troy says you haven't, sat down with him to tell him what his talk is going to be about. So he's reconsidering. He may not even be available.
We'll do whatever Troy wants to do.
Troy really lighting up Portland for us. And by the way, skiing is real. Come ski this summer.
There was a mystery voice there. Was that you, Loren?
That
Yeah,
was my
sorry.
wife.
I tried to. I know there's not enough female voices in this space, so I have a new voice modulator to switch it up just a tad bit.
Yeah, we'll throw up info up in the nest. But yeah, tickets are $149 for early bird, and we have discounted tickets. I think we put a discounted ticket in Troy's announcement post, so maybe we can throw up Troy's announcement post up in the nest. And if you just go down in the replies, I think there's a promo for I think maybe 109. But yeah, we try to pride ourselves on being extremely accessible and affordable. And like Troy already said, I mean, Troy did an amazing job talking about the conference, but we're a nonprofit, all volunteer led, so it's really about just having the best possible experience. And now that Pacific Bitcoin's no more, we're really trying to fill that void for the West Coast. So during the summer, best time of the year, and vacation opportunity, and connect with everyone on the coast.
Beautiful. Thanks, Eddie. All right. Well, before we let Troy go, does anyone else have any questions for him? Or if not, you'll see him up in Portland. Oh, go ahead, Dom.
Hey Troy, I may have missed it, but when is that data coming out of all the holder data that you guys gathered?
We're trying to finalize and publish our report before the Las Vegas conference, right? So I'm cranking on it this weekend. Like we're working on it like nonstop right now. I mean, I should say my co-organizers of this nonprofit. Colin Brown is the co-founder. He also lives here in Portland. And then Andy Perkins also works with us. He's a professor of marketing at Washington State University. He's the guy crunching the stats. I'm not a stats guy. I'm a narrative guy. I'm a philosopher. So Andy and I are working on it. We are also full-time academics right at the end of our school year. So it is a crunch right now, but we've got all the data in, and we're just like cranking through the statistics. I send him questions, he sends me statistical analysis, and we keep diving deeper into the data. It's a huge data set. The survey takes like 25 minutes to take. Part of our survey data is like what we call moral foundations, which is a kind of psychological profile of who owns Bitcoin. One of our findings, I'll say this, is that our psychological profile of Bitcoin miners has not changed at all. It's unbelievably tight from last finding. So there's a picture of who owns Bitcoin that is emerging that doesn't hold along political lines, but it's they care about certain things. They have certain values, and that one's getting even more robust. So I've got a lot of work ahead of me, Dom. I'm going to get my ass to work on that and get you a report as soon as possible. But I'm hoping to get it published before the Las Vegas conference. And with that, Terence, I mean, I'll take off now. Thank you so much for having me up, and Loren, thank you for all the questions. People are really kind here.
They
And
are.
thanks
This is
for
a good group.
educating me about what is happening to my 401k, which I unfortunately cannot invest in Bitcoin. Otherwise, I'd just be all in. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much, Troy. We'll see you up in Portland. And yeah, please join us anytime, whether you want to talk or just hang out and listen. Really appreciate it. And thanks for all the great questions, everyone. And Lauren, if you want to keep the space going, we can keep going, but we could say goodbye to Troy, or we can move on to other things. I would love to hear from Dark today. Dark hasn't chimed in
Yeah,
much, and he
it's
always has
entirely up
good.
to you, but it is still.
What?
I'm
What?
sorry. I
I'm,
said it's entirely up to you, but it is still. There's a ton of spaces going on. I just took a peek around, just because of all of the insanity going on. Like it
yes.
is happening, so maybe we can take at least half an hour or so and
No,
talk
that's what
about
I'm
that stuff.
saying. Yes,
Yeah,
that was
buddy,
my kind way of saying it's time to segue,
you are
but
the
you
man,
didn't pick up
Terrence.
on.
That is why we call you Daddy.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
No.
Daddy would like to know from Darkside what he's seen and what's going on. Now that we're going to shift gears a little bit.
Yeah, first, I really enjoyed that. Thanks so much, guys. What a great testimony to the history of Bitcoin. And it was just fun to listen to. So, what's going on? Look, I think that, Jamie Dimon, who I really don't like, but said something that I thought was exceptionally brilliant this morning on TV, and I saw a clip. He said that, trading deals are designed to make your partners stronger, right? And when you think about that in terms of what's going on with China and 750,000 dead American kids from fentanyl, where are we really headed with this China relationship? And the more I'm beginning to like step back and just look at this from a historical perspective, the more I'm beginning to agree. And another neocon that I really don't like, Mark Levin, made the point last night that, look, are we doing to China what we did to the Soviet Union, which is to destroy them economically? Um, I think that's where this is headed, right? I think we are going to restructure our trade around deals with our friends, and we are going to structure trade deals that make both parties stronger. And I think we're going to decouple from China. And I will add that while China has a very unique dictatorial level of capitalism, I'm not sure that Commander Xi can withstand, losing the American market. And potentially, the goal here is to sort of change the landscape in China. And then that brings us to the next question, which is the devil you know is sometimes better than the devil you don't know, right? And what comes out of, if you do topple the government of China, what's next? I'm not sure. But anyway, just a lot of heavy thinking going on right now, and we're looking at the Treasury, the 10-year 441, just wild stuff. Um, there's other problems. There's a lot of problems, right? And these problems have been papered over for the better part of 15 years, 17 years, and they're now bubbling to the surface, and they're going to have to be addressed, right? The U.S. Debt-based Ponzi scheme is blowing up, right? Like that's just a fact, right? When you think that we've printed via debt $37 trillion, and there's not enough money in the market to have an orderly functioning US Treasury market, that should tell you everything you need to know about money printing. It doesn't work, right? Like this whole system is about to break. And the only way to fix a lack of liquidity is to insert a metric shit ton of liquidity. So I think that's where we're headed. I think they're going to have to devalue the US dollar substantially, right? So you're going to see competitive devaluations around the world. There couldn't be a more bullish case for Bitcoin. And I would add, last night, and I made this comment on Kelly's show, last night was like the first night since 0809, since that crisis, that I actually went to bed feeling a lot better about having my money in Bitcoin than in a bank. Just consider that, right? Like, what does that really mean? If your money's not safe in a bank, right, what does that mean for Bitcoin? And that's going to be the driver, right? Like, I don't believe when the next big series of bank failures comes around, and they're coming, rest assured. I don't believe there's an appetite in this country to bail out the banks. And if you don't bail out the banks are going to bail themselves out with your money. Call it a bail in, and in the worst case scenario, the great taking. So, we're going down troubled waters. Like these are troubled times. But we'll see. We'll see whether the Fed, has the stomach to step in and bail out at least the hedge funds that are stuck in these basis trades that are blowing up. A lot of trades are blowing up right now, guys. It's they're not things that are obvious. Everyone stares at the stock market and thinks that, wow, this volatility is crazy. We got to bail out the 401ks. These people don't care about your 401ks. They care about their buddies, the hedge funds, the credit markets, right? Like that's what matters to them is the credit markets. Credit markets are infinitely bigger than the equity markets. So, look, strap in. It's going to be wild times, but restructuring a broken economy is not easy. And hats off to the words that are coming out of Scott Bessent's mouth, right? When he talks about Wall Street's had it great for a bunch of years, it's time for Main Street to have it great. That's very comforting, man. I haven't heard words like that come out of a Secretary Treasury in my lifetime, in my entire lifetime. And so I'm very comforted by what I'm hearing, and I'm ready to take pain to get to a better place.
Lauren, do you have any reaction to that, or are you
Yeah.
not? Are you
I
numb? Are you
usually no.
comfortably
I
numb? No.
Oh, I like that. That's a reference to a wonderful song. No, I actually these are the times I actually refer to Robert, also known as Infra, who is no longer in the room. It seems like I was just cruising around spaces and different things. Definitely the topic du jour, because it's one of those things where I think maybe Dark said it best to describe my feelings, which is these are the times where it's you just sleep well at night knowing that you are your value is held in a safe place. Your value isn't in the hands of some shady banker somewhere, some 401k, some mystery person that you just blindly trust with antiquated algorithms to manage your 401k plan for you. So to me, I mean, I love watching this. It's entertaining. I like speaking about it because I like to educate people about Bitcoin. So I hate to say it, but I kind of love these times because it's exciting. I hate the monotony of just the grind and the rat race and just like everything is all these sheeple doing their things. Everybody's on their treadmill, paying their mortgage, not really waking the F up to the reality that is the world of love and hope and change and doing what you really want, being able to marry your passion in life with what you do to pay the bills. You know, I have a kid that's just incredible musician and just like music is in his soul and it just emanates out of his pores. He's just amazing. And I really hope that I would like to see a world one day where he can just do that and pay the bills. And when he wakes up in the morning, he won't have to, you know, struggle to get out of bed because he hates doing his job, but he actually can marry that. And the current world I see where the fiat system that is in a state of insanity at this moment, that path is not going to be a world where he can do that. So I'm really sitting back, grabbing the popcorn. I really hope this change isn't sudden to the point where it just throws everything off kilter and we do end up in a scenario where we're under an overpass with a bag of cat food just trying to survive. But I hope it is a world where we can slowly transition to a Bitcoin standard in a peaceful manner where, you know, there's not a lot of death and carnage involved. So those
Well,
are
if I see
plans.
you
Sorry, I'll
under
shut up.
the underpass, I'll bring you a blanket.
Oh, thank
Let's go to
you. I
Matt
want a blankie.
McConaughey and then you, Nikolai.
There haven't been a lot of slow moving revolutions, so I will say that uh, the outcome that you just said is unlikely. I think the ultimate outcome is that we are going to
Matt, let a
transition
man
to.
hope and dream. You just crushed my dreams right there in one statement. Thank you, sir.
Back under
I
the
take
underpass, Lauren. Go ahead, Matt.
I'm back to the underpass. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Look, you know, we need a shakeup, right? While the S&P is crab walking upwards thanks to the zombification of the capital market system, because it would just nonstop stimulus. Everyone looks at their 401ks and they feel rich, and they keep borrowing against their house, their home, which keeps going up as well, 7 to 8% a year, reliably like clockwork. Except none of it's real, and it's all driven by money supply jiggering and money velocity messing with and other dynamics. And we're really dislocated from reality. And the further that we push this fantasy, you know, we're basically sleepwalking. And now it's like the middle of the day, the next day, and there's lots of cars on the road. So like it's high time to wake up. And you know, the tariff thing is going to escalate, is going to continue, I believe, to escalate. China is showing no signs of slowing down. They've actually dispatched trade representatives and have made mention that Xi himself is going to start showing up in places like Vietnam and Malaysia and elsewhere in Asia. And the idea is that even though he's never done this before, he's basically saying, you know, send home your trade representatives. I'll talk to you directly in your own country. You don't have to go cower to Donald Trump. I'll come to you, which is for the Chinese, for anyone, frankly, it's showing face. But for the Chinese, it's very unusual. And it speaks to Scott's, it speaks to someone's earlier point, you know, there is an incredible pressure on Xi right now, right? China is food insecure and they're energy insecure. They import both of those things. Those things are really important. And the population doesn't have a consumer class. They're not very well off, so to speak. And then there's a small class that's making money because they put money into shadow banks and into hypothecated loans against empty apartment buildings. But like ultimately, there is no real wealth that's accruing. Being a factory for the world is just really good for the CCP overlords, but it's not getting down to the people. Anyway, what's all this? Where's all this going? The
That's what
system
I
is
was gonna
is
say. Where
going.
is this
Yeah,
going?
Easy,
yeah.
Daddy. I
It's
love
okay.
this
The
rant.
system.
I want to meet Matt. Who
Yes.
is this Matt guy? I want to meet him in person. Sorry, Matt. Go, go.
No worries, no worries. I think honestly, it's designed to fail at this point, and I don't. The Bitcoin is a failover system that oh wait, they papered over so their 401ks wouldn't become a 201k, and then that just exacerbated the problem. They don't have access to, I don't believe, to those mechanisms anymore. One, the investing populace doesn't buy it, and two, there are viable alternatives in Bitcoin, and so I think the more that they try to play you know, money supply games and and quantitative bazookas and quantum bazookas and whatever else they come up with next, the more we're going to look at back and forth to each other and calmly say, well, those people are crazy, and move over and deeper into the Bitcoin standard. So I think slowly first, and then suddenly, and then all at once. And then there's that quote. I'll stop here. There's that quote. There are decades, weeks where decades happen, decades where weeks happen. Well, this is going to be, I believe, a 6-week period. I think where a century happens.
4th of July, 2026.
That was beautiful,
Hey, Loren,
Matt. That was beautiful.
hey, Loren, I had the
Are you going
chance.
to
I had the chance to
Are you
meet.
going to Vegas, Matt? Matt, are you going to be in Vegas, buddy? Damn
No,
it.
I live in New York. I'm
Okay.
working here.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, Dark.
Yeah, I was just going
Go
to say
ahead,
I
Dark.
had the opportunity to spend a couple days with Matt down in Florida,
Oh,
and
you lucky son of a gun. I want
yeah,
to meet
no,
this guy.
what an awesome guy, and just a wealth of knowledge. He really understands at an extremely deep level financial markets, but beyond that, he's a builder, right? A guy who's actually built things, and oftentimes on these stages we get a lot of guys that come up here and they've never really built anything, and there's something, when I'm around builders, you can tell the difference, right? Like they've experienced what it means to create value at a really high level, and they have just an insight that's so much deeper than your average, financial kind of voyeur. So anyway, hats off to Matt. Really enjoyed meeting you, hanging out with you. I look forward to spending more time with you, brother.
Yeah. Go ahead. Somebody came off mute there.
Yeah, it
Oh,
was just.
Nikolai?
Oh, go ahead,
Uh,
Nikolai.
yeah, channeling Dark's comments of a few moments ago about the system um, seizing up, and this is the essence of of Bitcoin and holding a bearer instrument that doesn't have counterparty risk, and it's such a underappreciated form of risk, and you know, uh, forgive me for this, but I was in the elevator in like '98, going up, you know, to a trading desk in New York, and I turned to the guy next to me, and we were both scared. We were both scared shitless because the global financial system was seizing up, and I had the same experience in 2008. And people that aren't kind of part of it don't see it and don't know it's happening as it's kind of unwinding, and people stop trading with each other. And you know, um, the end game there is that regular companies that aren't financial companies, they can't make payroll in a week or two because they can't get access to you know, liquidity. And I don't think we're there yet, but it would be very interesting. I'm outside now, and so I don't really know what's going on. But if anybody does know, like our trading desk getting the tap on the shoulder is a customer coming in for a bid, and the salesman is telling him, "Sorry, we can't buy any more paper right now." It'd be interesting to see if there's anybody that is currently working in the industry and understand what it feels like right now on the street.
J- Jesse, did you want to chime in here?
No, man, I'm good. I'm good.
Uh,
Well, I'm not.
Terrence,
I'm not currently
go
work.
ahead. Go ahead,
Yeah, I'm
Dark.
not
Yeah.
currently working on the street. But when you look at what's going on in the 10-year, which should be the most liquid instrument in the world, right? And it's trading like a penny stock. I think that answers your question, right? Like I've been in that situation where I've got the tap on the shoulder and told, "Hey, no more. It's time to reduce risk." And in the end, it really is about counterparty, right? Like that. What drives illiquidity is your fear. Well, a couple things, but mainly your fear that the person you're trading with won't make good on that trade. Right? That is the ultimate nightmare. I've talked about it countless times about what we went through in 08, 09, when I was running the broker dealer and not knowing whether Lehman trades were going to be made good at T+3 settlement, right? Like they just walked out the door. The entire firm of Lehman walked out the door, including the back office. and nobody knew what trades were good and what trades weren't good, right? That's what Nikolai's referring to, is when you don't know whether your counterparty, the person you're trading with, is going to make good on the trade, then you're not going to make a big bid. You're going to make very small bids with very wide markets, right? And that's where illiquidity really starts to explode. And the only answer, the only solution to this problem is a massive injection of liquidity into the system, which is crazy, right? Like that's the devaluation of the dollar. And ultimately, we don't know, because remember, in 08, 09, the Fed and the administration were on the same page. That's not the case.
Dark just went to the dark side of the
So I
moon.
gotta,
We lost you there for a second.
y- yeah, I gotta.
Lauren, what I was actually gonna say was
Hey,
while we had Matt and Dark here, I would love to get them doing like a back and forth, kind of like how we get with Joe sometimes, just because well, first of all, it's really cool that you guys just met in person, but I feel like you're both Wall Street guys, and it'd be cool to hear you guys go back and forth. But that was what I was gonna say, Lauren.
Got you. I don't think they're going to go back and forth like Joe and Dark do, because they actually agree on things and they wouldn't be in the ring wildly swinging haymakers at each other's faces. So I think they'd be in there hugging it out and maybe having some enjoyable comments together. But we'll probably save it for another time, because I think that my phone's been just going beep 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 with alerts that Bitcoin price is on the move upward. So maybe we have our GameStop purchases. Maybe we have, I don't know. It's like people are being liquidated for their shorts, etc. I don't know if anybody's been paying attention or not, but it looks like we've had a little green candle happen in the last few minutes here while we've been talking.
I think we
Anybody
all
else?
stopped buying. We all agreed to stop buying coffee with our Bitcoin for a few days, just so we can get the candles back up.
I thought that was just our tight knit group here that got that memo. Is it everybody now?
It is everybody. So hey, let's go to Dog Said, and then let's go around the
I
horn
think
and say our goodbyes, because I've got to leave.
said something.
Wait, I hear someone
I'm
talking.
sorry.
Is that you?
I apologize. Chuck said something about a 90-day tariff pause on non-retaliating
Uh,
countries. So that's why the equity markets and everything is starting to
Thank you.
fly.
Didn't we have that a couple of days ago, or it's the same thing? I thought a couple.
I don't know. Zero Head just tweeted it, so it feels more real than like rando account guy, which was last time.
Well, plus this stuff seems to be changing in real time, and so it's like, oh, if you're not keeping up exactly on, it's like, is this the third tariff on that country? And so I think there's a lot of things that this could be the second or third time we've heard the same news, or what we think is the same news, but it's actually just the third variety of the same thing, a third tariff, or
Yeah, no, he ratcheted Trump did via tweet up to 125 China, and then he's basically paused everybody else. So he's playing the asymmetrical game, and now he's really put China into complete spotlight here.
wow, craziness. It'd be cool if we could just spend a couple minutes talking about Vegas a minute, but I know you were going to go to Dog. Good day, Dog.
Yeah, hey guys, how you all doing? No, I just wanted to say, things look good, and I was curious as to what the hell just flipped the market because I've been in different spaces, and everybody has been doubting. Oh shit, man, it's all doom and gloom. It's all over, and I don't know how far along you all got into the tariff conversation, but I just kind of wanted to maybe just share that I think at a very high level, I think Trump knows what he's doing. I think him not being completely open and communicative as to what he's doing is on purpose. And I think all of what's happening right now is supposed to happen. It's a part of the agenda. And I'm just happy for Bitcoin and you guys maintaining these spaces, even though that there's complete doom and gloom. Everyone's throwing in the towel, and you guys maintain that consistent message where hey, it's all about Bitcoin. Let's focus on the North Star, and one of the things that I'm waiting for in the future is these lending products that Darkside talks about, and because at least for me, I want to do what the rich do, not sell, just borrow against, obviously at a very very conservative loan to value. But yeah, I'm excited. It feels good, and thanks for having me up, guys.
Looks like Joe showed up just in time to say hellos and goodbyes as well. Hey, Joe.
Yeah. Hi. How's everyone doing?
Amazing. We
Yeah, me too. This is
yeah,
great. A complete
isn't it?
capitulation from the Trump administration. Good move, right? So, if only now we know that the fake news that was reported as fake news was not really fake news, it was actual news. So all the conspiracy theorists aren't going to like that one.
Joe, are you trying to stir a hornet's nest, or
No,
do you poke
there,
one, or do you stir one? I
no,
don't know what the saying
the
is.
reality is when people go back and read Twitter threads about, the Fed's about to capitulate or different things out there, the history always follows through. It always exposes the pretenders. So I think it's a marvelous move. I'm really glad. I'll compliment the president for standing down, knowing that he didn't hold the cards and that he had to. It is not something it should be, sort of poke fun at because it's prudent policy, and I think it makes a lot of sense. So, good move, President Trump.
Dark, I think Joe came into the ring and called you a B, and I don't think it was the Bitcoin B.
Now, look,
Do you want to reply?
yeah, no, look,
Yes.
I think I agree. It's a good move to back down on those people that are willing to talk. We're not backing down on China, right? Like that's the most important one. I've been kind of screaming that from the rooftops, right? Like earlier today, I said, they killed 750,000 American kids, and I think this is similar to the move we made against the Soviet Union, right? Like we couldn't beat them militarily, but we beat them economically. And look, we're not out of the woods here by any means. I mean, you know, the fact that we get a relief rally here, great. But ultimately, decoupling from China is going to be a painful experience. It's going to be a destabilizing experience. I don't think the credit markets are going to just all of a sudden loosen up because you're talking about restructuring all of the supply chains of the United States and of the world, right? Like part of this deal, I have a feeling, is it's not just trade deals with the US and let's say Japan, right? These trade deals are going to include isolating China, right? So, like, as this kind of develops and plays out, I think we're going to see more and more, shuddering back and forth because China's played an absolutely critical role in the development of the supply chains of the entire globe. So let's see where this goes. I don't see it as a capitulation. I see this as intelligence, right? Like if we
Well,
would have capitulated to China, that'd be a different story. But we're not doing that.
Well, that's
was
going to
it
come
night?
soon.
Hold on.
It's going to
Was
come
it?
soon enough. It'll be probably a month or so before we capitulate to China. It just
Was
takes a
it?
lot longer.
Was Asteroid trying to say something there?
Asteroid, I
Terrence, do
think
you
you're
want
you're
to?
in the matrix, Asteroid. I think we should
Asteroid's in the
extend this
Matrix.
for what's that? Lauren, you got to go, right? I'm sorry.
No, 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 I don't. It was Terrence who actually was saying that. So I just wanted to double check with Terrence since he's actually the host. So I didn't know. I can stay a few extra minutes.
Yeah,
Terrence,
we can keep going for a while. I'm just having my breakfast, so that's all. But I'm here.
we call it brunch now, sir. Go ahead,
Yes.
Joe.
Yeah.
Well, again, like this is the problem with these discussions online, and it's a particular problem. Even if you're in support of the administration, there's a certain segment of supporters I will not label, which will no matter what happens, no matter what result, they'll say, "Oh, this was Trump's intent all along. It was always planned for them to throw out this big ostentatious display of tariffs on every single country that didn't make any sense in an indiscriminate fashion that was tethered to a trade deficit." And then when he walks it back and he says 90-day pause. That was the goal. It was always the goal. So the problem is you can't have an intelligent discussion. You can't actually talk about what makes sense from a prudential policy because everything is a 4D chess move where it was all by design. When we know, yesterday everybody was criticizing, and it's funny, I have 150 comments and probably a dozen DMs from people. Why'd you report the fake news about the 90-day pause? That was never going to happen. He would never back down. He'd never do a 90 pause. Now the MAGA crowd is going to spout from the hilltops that, oh, this was all part of the plan. It was always about China. It was never about these other countries. There's no honest discussion. You can't have an analytical discussion with these people because no matter what Savior Trump does, and I don't hate Trump. I wish him well. I think the country needs a shakeup, right? I honestly think he's doing a lot of positive things. Okay, but the reality is these people look at him with an unobjective, biased view, and that's why you can't have an intelligent discussion. I have had presidents before that I voted for that I vehemently disagreed with what they do. I think they've done stupid policies. I voted for Obama. I thought he did horrible policies, and I disagreed with him publicly at the time. But that's the difference between somebody who wants to have an intellectual discussion about policy and someone who wants to put faith in dear leader. Because once you put faith in dear leader and don't talk objectively, you can't have a discussion. Everything is whatever a leader says, we do.
Love that rant, Joe. Thank you, Old Taylor. Go ahead and chime in, sir.
Um,
Your
sorry,
voice
yeah,
changed.
I just wanted, yeah, sorry, I just wanted to say that, like Joe, don't you think it's possible that, they're just taking the thing one step at a time or a couple steps at a time, and that the plan changes as the circumstances change
Yeah, it's a
throughout,
cute
but
baby.
that they have large scale goals in mind, in the
I,
long term?
I actually completely agree. I 100% agree with what you just said. And the way I would phrase it is this: they don't have a plan. There is no 4D, chess game that they're playing. There is no mastermind. Here's how they're going to dismantle the global banking cartel. There's no plan like that. They are taking it day by day. They're throwing stuff against the wall and hoping some of it sticks. And that is the plan. The plan is not that we have some crystal ball as to all this is going to shake out. The actual plan is let's figure out what we can do and let's start from there. And yeah, listen, that's fine. But don't mistake every single move as some brilliant master stroke, because I think this 9-day pause shows you it was not a brilliant master stroke.
Yeah. So I don't think every move they do is, but I do think they have large scale, long term goals in mind.
Agreed. I agree with you.
The
I clearly think they want to reassert global dominance in the United States. They want to focus on America first. They want to try to rein in, excess spending. They want to take out, the corruption and ruling class. I agree with all that. I think that they're trying a lot of things. Some will work, some won't. And I don't fault them when some things don't work. I do fault them when they double down on stupid policy. And these indiscriminate tariffs across the board were stupid policy. Full stop.
Joe, it could be both though, right? You do agree with that. Like they could be both having a strategic plan that they've thought through and contingencies, et cetera, and then also realize there's going to be massive chop and they're going to have to make split second decisions and be entrepreneurs about it, right? Because that's kind of the nuance that I see with it is that they're trying to steer the ship, but it's difficult. And so they've got to move quickly in those cases.
That's fine. And again, listen, like I said, I totally agree with you on that. People make mistakes, right? And I don't fault people for making mistakes. I do fault people when they double down. For example, any objective person would have said the rollout of these tariffs and the calculations behind them and the goals were haphazard, didn't make sense, were confusing. And what did they do? They did the smart thing, which is to admit, yeah, this wasn't really a good idea. We're going to pause this for 90 days. And they're never going to actually stick, right? Now, China, that's a different story. The China is a big thing, and Dark is right. Like I think that's always been the focus of their intent. But they realized that the market hated these tariffs. They were done in a stupid way, and they bent the knee. Okay, so I don't fault them. Just here's where you should fault people. I always tell my associates, I say, look, if you make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. As long you have to own it and try not to make the mistake again. Everybody makes mistakes, right? But when the thing is that's really frustrating is that for 48 hours, there are people in these rooms saying no, that all this tariff across the board was a brilliant strategy. It made tons of sense. It was so. I mean, I'd love to hear Gary now because Gary will come in here and he'll say this was a brilliant move, and it wasn't a brilliant move. Nothing about this was smart.
Well,
disagree.
I'm going to disagree, and respectfully, because I think that what was accomplished was that Trump put all of these countries on notice that they're going to have to negotiate. Like we're going to have to get much better deals, right? And I have a feeling, I don't know, maybe this is a long shot, but I have a feeling currency stability and dollar dominance is going to be at the heart of these negotiations. So again, I don't think this is just about trade. I think there's something much bigger and greater going on, which is let's see if one of the demands of the Trump administration is that countries peg their currency to the dollar, right? And that we don't have currency wars and that we come out of this with a much weaker dollar. right? Look, if your goals, if your stated goals to begin with, and of course I'm just speculating here, but were to substantially weaken the dollar, right? Essentially crash the dollar and at the same time maintain dollar dominance, they're on the road to achieving some of these goals. And ultimately, look, the we've known, albeit forgetting about Kamala Harris, the rest of us knew that China was the enemy, right? And
Wait, Dark, what do you mean by their goals? Okay, so you said the goal
yeah,
is to
look,
crash the dollar.
yeah, I think they're going to crash the dollar. Yeah, I do. I don't think we're out of the woods here by the least bit, because once people understand, when Scott Bessent gets up and says, "Hey, look, Wall Street's had it great for 8 years. It's time for Main Street to have it great," right? Like that. That's a statement, right? Like Scott Bessent is a very, very smart guy. You might not like Trump. You might not like.
Scott Bessent said that he thinks equities are fairly priced here, and that he thinks that it would be
Yeah,
stupid to bet against his market.
yeah,
So why
potentially.
why is
That
that?
that doesn't mean that
No,
doesn't mean
that's
they're gonna.
what he just said. What are you
I
talking
understand.
about?
I understand. He also said that Wall Street's had it great. Main Street needs to have it great. So, those two
That
comments
doesn't
are.
mean Wall Street's going to take it on the chin.
Oh,
It just means
maybe.
that we
I
want
hope.
shared
Look,
prosperity.
exactly. I hope Wall Street doesn't take it on the chin. But the devaluing the currency, right? The Mar-a-Lago Accords that I think are coming, right? That's what this is about. To suggest that this administration is jumping into this and they didn't have a plan and they're backing down, I don't see it. I see it quite the opposite. I see them as executing on their plan absolutely meticulously, right? They've brought
Yesterday they
let
said
me
there will be
finish.
no.
I didn't interrupt you. Okay. I think they're executing on their plan meticulously. I think they've brought everybody to the table. They have everybody flying in to cut deals and to reset global trade. And again, I think their main goal was to decouple from China. But I really believe that, and I may be proven wrong, right? Like you suggest in 30 days they're going to bow down to China. I don't think so.
Yeah, and in
I
30
don't think
days,
so.
when they in 30 or 60, whenever it is, that when they do bow down, people will say it was a master stroke. There was this brilliant move. We got renegotiated on some, additional vanilla exports from Madagascar. I mean, it doesn't fundamentally change the macroeconomic chessboard. It's rearranging deck chairs and a sinking ship, right? So you're not really fixing the issues. And I'll just note for the record, okay, if you believe that this was the intended policy, then why did the Trump administration officials say the last 2 days there will be no 90-day pause repeatedly? Was that a lie? Did they go out and just lie to the public and say, "Oh, we're not going to do a 90-day pause. The president's not even considering it. It's fake news. All the media doesn't know what they're talking about."
It's a negotiating tactic, though, to have a stone face like that. And by the way, it's a little bit in. I don't think it's fair to say nothing was achieved here when 75 countries lined up and are now engaged in various levels of discussions about building a long-term economic
Yeah,
framework between
they're
our
lying
countries in a
about that.
bilateral
They're lying
fashion.
about that. So you want to know why? Because four of the countries so far they said approach them. Their PMs are all saying they didn't actually approach the White House. So this is spin you're believing from an administration desperate to save face. And you can say, oh, it's a negotiating tactic. The reason that doesn't make sense as a negotiating tactic is because no negotiations were completed. Just follow the logic. If the negotiation tactic was to leave the tariffs on place until you got deals done, how come you can't announce a single deal that was done before you changed and pivoted? Name a single deal. One. Name a deal with Madagascar. You don't have one. Even the Vietnam deal wasn't done.
Well, again, you don't know. Again, you're speculating. You don't know what's been discussed. You're not in the room. So I think it's a little presumptive to
Yeah,
come out
I
and
agree.
categorically
I
state
agree.
you know what's been
Yeah.
said. So
So here's the
I
thing.
would suggest to
Here's
you
the thing.
that more has been done and more has been accomplished than you could imagine. And
So let's just follow the logic, everybody. I'm assuming because I haven't heard anything, but you're assuming that more has been done without hearing anything.
no, I'm
Where is the
speculating.
fallacy in that? Right.
No,
So but let's just
you're speaking in
let's
factual
stipulate.
terms, and
Let's
I've
stipulate.
said all along that I'm speculating that a
Fair
lot
enough.
more has been accomplished. So I don't
Yeah.
think it's fair to
Let's.
speak in factual terms.
Okay, that's
When you
fair.
came out and said there's going to be
I'll stipulate that.
a 90-day
That
pause, and you were wrong, right? Like you were really wrong,
I was
and that
wrong. I was
yeah,
wrong, even
yeah,
though it
you
was a
were
90
wrong.
day pause. Okay.
You posted that on Twitter, and a lot of people reacted to it
Oh man,
and
I
made
posted
financial
something that the
decisions
media
that were
reported.
wrong,
I
right?
posted something that media. media reported that ended
Yeah,
up being
MSNBC.
correct.
MSNBC is
Correct.
not the media.
Correct. It was okay.
MSNBC
It
is
was
not the
actually no.
media.
Actually, I was listening to
Nobody in this
CNBC.
room takes
I was listening on
MSNBC
CNBC who
seriously.
reported it.
I mean, if you're
It
taking
was
MSNBC as media,
yeah.
then we're in the middle of a race war,
It
the
was
likes of
on
which
CNBC reported it, not the the biggest
you
financial news
quoted.
network. That's why I
I'll
heard it
post your
live.
tweet. You quoted
And
MSNBC. You
it's
quoted
look,
Stephanie
no.
Wool.
Sustained.
Here's the
Sustained.
thing. Yeah. Well, here's the thing.
Sorry, go one at a time.
It's just absolutely absurd that I'm being attacked for tweeting something that was true. It was true. There's a 90-day pause. So that's just absolutely laughable. But putting it aside, okay, let's go back to what Dark said, which I think I totally agree with. We're all speculating, right? We don't know the public behind the scenes discussions. The thing I think is hilarious is that the people that have faith in dear leader Donald Trump, they think that it's okay to speculate that he's got many things accomplished behind the scenes. Whereas the people that will admittedly say, I haven't heard anything public. I don't know. I don't believe there's anything because I want to see, I want to trust, and not trust, but verify it. You guys say that's inappropriate, but it's okay to speculate in the context of just favoring dear leader that he achieved some
When you
masterstroke.
say you guys, what are we talking about here? Because I feel like
I'm
maybe I'm
talking
lumped
about,
into the
yeah,
you guys statement a little bit.
I'm talking about the people that come into these rooms and literally you could show them 2 + 2 = 4. Well, no, it doesn't. Donald Trump says it's 5. And you know what? We got to trust him because he's a businessman and he's figured everything out and he's got brilliant negotiators by his side.
Hmm.
And it's got to be 5, guys. Just don't trust your eyes or the
Five
math.
guys.
It's got to
Hey,
be
let's
5.
get some. Let's go for hands too, because I think people have been coming off mute trying to get in here. I definitely agree with Joe in don't trust, verify, if at all possible. Tomer's got a hand up. Lynn Dog has come off mute, so I'm assuming that you want to say something too, sir or
Yeah,
ma'am. Go
I
ahead,
do.
chime in.
I do. You know, Joe, the thing that bothers me is that you make statements and you speak for those that have a brain of their own. And the fact that, Donald Trump has been speaking about these tariffs for I don't know how long. I mean, years. And if you really think that him and his team have not thought through game theory on how this would play out and have a plan, it's insulting. It's
Why is
insulting.
it? Why is it insulting?
Shots
Tell me
fired.
why.
Shots
No,
fired.
I want to know why is it insulting? So we should assume our government is competent. You should say that's your philosophy. Just
No.
assume that they know
Again,
what they're doing.
don't speak for my assumption. Okay,
I'm
we're
asking you.
watching this
Tell me
play
why.
out, Joe.
No,
We're
tell me why.
literally watching this play out. Okay, so don't speak for, don't assume how I'm thinking or
I'm
we're
asking
thinking.
you. I'm
And so when
asking
you
you, sir.
talk in terms of when I come into these rooms and I speak to these people that X, Y, and Z, blah blah. I mean, Joe, it's insulting,
Yeah,
and
I'm
that's
sure. I'm
why
sure
people
all these
push on you
people.
so
I'm sure.
heavy.
I'm sure Jamie Dimon, all these people who said these tariffs are stupid, make no sense. All the business leaders way smarter than I am. They're all morons, right? You should just assume that they've got them chess game figured out. When by all accounts, right, in past situations and
Joe,
past
how about you
administrations,
speak for
Hey,
yourself?
I
How
am.
about
I
you
am. I
speak for
am. I'll
hey,
give
yourself,
you the. I'll
Joe.
Joe?
give you the long
Joe,
history of
was
evidence.
Jamie Dimon
Long,
real smart when he funded Epstein?
the
I
long
mean, come on,
history
man.
of
Like,
his. Okay,
are you
here we
really
go.
supporting the Epstein clan? Is that
Okay,
what it's come
Larry
down
Fink.
to?
What about Larry Fink? Larry Fink said the same thing. He said that elevated recession risk. And here's the thing: the ironic thing I'm asking you, I'm literally asking you, why you assume they have this figured out and have strategized this, and you cannot answer that question.
Yeah,
I asked you
no,
three
Joe, I
times.
just did. I just did.
Tell me what is it?
Okay,
Let's
I
hear it.
just did.
Let's hear it.
Okay, Joe, we're dealing with
Does anybody here an
very.
answer to the question? I'm
Listen,
just
Joe.
Yeah, I
Listen.
can shoot for an
Hang
answer.
on, Jesse. Hang on. We got Tomer, the voice of reason, coming in here in a second, but we'll let these guys iron it out for another few seconds, and then we're gonna go to Tomer. Lynn, response to
Yeah,
Joe.
look. If you don't think that this team has thought through and has a strategy, and the end result is going to be better for America, it's laughable. It's laughable.
Let's
again.
Okay?
I'm
let's
not
go.
hearing any answer.
Yeah,
I'm not
let's go
hearing any
ahead and
answer. It's just
maybe
avoiding the
end it
question.
at these guys not agreeing on how much trust we should put into a current president. Tomer, sir, voice of reason in these times often.
All right, fine. I'll provide something on reason rather than my own take, and it is. This is a question of, I hate to use a big word, so I'll define it right after. But this is a question of epistemology. It's like, how do we know what we know? And you need some evidence to fall in a position. You can be in a position of extreme uncertainty, and I think that is really, if I try to step back and not take sides on this, it's like, well, there's a little bit of evidence here, or there's an assumption you have to make to take the other side. I so without, I'd have to say, if you press me, who do I think is accurately it has a better grip on what the accuracy of the situation is? I do think it's Joe, right? And that's not to be disrespectful or laugh or make a laughable comment to some of the other guys. It's just based off of my life of experience. Management teams, even smart management teams, in rapidly changing dynamic circumstances, have to can formulate strategies, and usually, like any battle plan, and this is not my famous saying, it's like, no plan, no strategy survives the first shot in battle. And I think this is what's been happening. There's just been a lot of dynamics playing out that aren't exactly predictable. There are people in politics, and I'm not trying to take sides on the political scale, because I think they all do this, who will say things that aren't highly correspondent to reality, in order to try to make something else happen, or to prevent people from seeing something that's actually going on. And we're in a crazy dynamic thing. And so it's really important that you have evidence for something, and different people will have a different threshold of evidence, so and different assumptions that they make. But it's important for every individual who is self-thinking to say, well, what would need to be true for the side that I'm leaning towards to be wrong, right? And it's just that in one case you've got a management team that hasn't anticipated fully all the consequences of a rapidly changing situation in a very dynamic world, and on the other hand, you've got a situation, you've got to believe that they did somehow plan for all this stuff. I find some of the rationalizations of what's going on myself quite hard to believe. Like, I just don't believe they're purposely doing this to cause that happen, to make this happen, and then it's not happening, but it's still okay because they foresaw this and that. It sounds more like a lot of excuses to me and rationalizations than reality. Now, I just bring it back to Bitcoin because this is a Bitcoin space. The beauty of Bitcoin is there's no manager to change their mind or reformulate the plan as we go along. All right. Nobody's saying, oh, gee, we need a looser monetary policy because of the tariffs. Oh, because of the 90-day pause, we need to tighten the monetary policy. Or we need to do this, we need to do that. It's like the fact that we can't do anything is what provides clarity. I can't see into the future of what Donald Trump is going to do in the next 30 minutes. Right? And that's, again, no criticism of him. He's trying to do what he can based off of what he knows with his team in the world. Right? I can predict the precise future of the Bitcoin monetary policy issuance rate, rules, going out past my death. And so that is what's so valuable and powerful about this. And it's why every time some other altcoin or some other thing tries to adapt to make itself better, to better compete with Bitcoin, any change it makes is a change for the worse, because it's removing the predictability and reliability of the future of the progress into the future of this thing. And that's like, the reason I really want to make this point is we're now living in a world where every government in the world is changing its policy, its announced policy, whether it was a long-term strategy or not, is changing its announced policy at unpredictable moments in rapid succession. And then on the other hand, we've got this one other thing that's reliable and predictable, and that is so valuable, because if you didn't have that, we would all have to be constantly panicking and readjusting and repositioning and reformulating based off of whether or not we think that the most recent change is going to stick for 30 minutes, 30 days, 3 days. And luckily we don't have to. That's my attempt to weigh in on something I haven't spoken
Beautiful.
on the spaces in a week.
Absolutely beautiful, Tomer. I think a couple of points that really hit me right in the face. You said We don't know what Donald Trump is going to do over the next 5 minutes. Bigger problem, Donald Trump probably doesn't even know what Donald Trump's going to do over the next 5 minutes. You talked about 4D chess, maybe 4D checkers we're talking about there. And another thing that totally skipped my mind, but it was about something you just said. But good stuff, man. We'll go to Jesse. Put your hand up if you want to interject on this. I know Joe probably has some comments as well.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go on my little rant on this as well. And Tomer, I love listening to you. It's just I feel like I'm just soaking up knowledge every single time. And I'm just gonna kind of pile on top of what you just said. And it's really, and Joe, you said it as well. And when you and Dark were going back and forth, this is all speculation. Everything we're talking about is what we think based on, not 100% clarity, and no one can tell the future. And so we can come up here all day long and just talk about who we think is right or wrong, and none of us will be correct because we're all just guessing. And that's okay. We get value out of these conversations because we can try to make sense of what is a very complicated situation, and we can make bets and we can make theories. And I love following trends and I love trying to predict what's going to happen, but I just wanted everyone to take like that reality pill and realize that nobody knows. And to that point, that's kind of like the point I want to make, is that more than one person can be right about two different statements, right? Like we had someone in here earlier, Lynn, I guess, was saying that, they have contingency plans. And I agree with that. They must have contingency plans. I got to believe that. And, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right. And Joe could also be completely right, that they completely fudged things up and that they made mistakes and that they're in the back room with each other and Besant's trying to figure out what he's going to say. Or Joe could be wrong, and Besant could be telling the truth, and he could be giving hints that they have cards that they're not showing yet, and they're about to drop some amazing positive news on us, and that could also be true, right? And so my point is that we don't know, and that goes back, I'll circle this back and land the plane back to Tomer, to the one thing that we do know. And the one thing that we know is Bitcoin. And that's the point I've been making in these rooms just day in and day out, with me staying convicted and staying confident and staying happy, because I just look at it as Bitcoin's on sale. If you understand what Bitcoin is, if you understand how it works, it's meant to resist these kinds of situations. It was literally built for this kind of insecurity. Like if you go back and you read the white paper, it was written to solve these exact problems: uncertainty, the uncertainty of governments, the uncertainty of banks, the uncertainty of all these trade wars. There's all this uncertainty. The only thing you can be certain of is Bitcoin. So I don't care like where you get it, how you get it, at what price you get it, but just realizing that we're all just talking up here. And I'll just land it by saying I think that, you know, I think that they're trying to do a good job here. I think they tried to do something with the tariffs that didn't work, and I think they are now trying to backtrack. But I think that they've got Bitcoin in mind. And Tomer, I think they know what you know, and that's what continues to make me bullish. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I'm bullish. Okay, I'll stop there.
Oh, you know what? It reminded me of what the third point I was going to make about Tomer, which was the consistency of Bitcoin. And when he mentioned, and that's what you said towards the end, where you should have landed the plane before you were talking about
Sorry.
Bitcoin. Just
Hey, Lauren,
um,
I'm going to go just because
okay,
I have to
Joe.
make a 1
Yeah,
p.m., but I just don't think I'm rage
sure.
quitting. I appreciate everybody's
Yeah,
comments on
no,
the
appreciate you
subject.
coming
So
in, man. Yeah.
thanks.
No, we appreciate you coming in here and offering your view of things. Even though it, differs from a lot of the folks in here, I get a lot out of it because I find often the truth in the middle, or the truth more, the way you're presenting it, than another at times. And it also stimulates me to go out and do my own research and try to find as many other sources on said topic, just so I can
Yeah.
educate myself. So really
Let
appreciate
me
it,
let
man.
me just leave one thing real quick for the audience here. I totally agree with what Jesse was saying about Bitcoin long term. We all know it's going to do fine, right? No matter, all this is noise. Even if we end up in a recession because of this stuff, long term Bitcoin's going to do absolutely fine. So you shouldn't worry about this. in any short term. The reason why I'm passionate about it is because I view the opportunity for Bitcoin to have a roaring bull market this year and into next is ripe. And what I really get frustrated about is I get frustrated if we're sidetracked by macroeconomic events and a potential recession dragging down the price, which could delay adoption by 2 to 5 years. And I don't think that's crazy at all. But we all know in the long run, it's going to be Bitcoin. It's just a question of, are we going to just have to deal with these macro issues that are going to delay that process? I, for one, think that that would be a really sad thing to do because I really want to see a really strong bull market here in Bitcoin. So anyway, I'm going to jump. Thanks.
Love it. Hey, thanks again, Joe. Tomer did say something like, Bitcoin is a thing that we know, and that's one of the problem when you have these coins that change. And in fact, the change is actually part of the problem because it's constantly changing. I really love that part of what Tomer said. I think Puncher has his hand up, and then Humble. Punchy.
I agree with Tomer. I agree with Jesse. I even agree with Joe to a large extent. And I say this as someone who's in Bitcoin with both feet, almost as an observer. What I do get slightly perturbed about is when I go on and listen into some of these early morning spaces with traditional finance guys. And it's all like, he's stupid. They're all stupid. They don't know what they're doing. They don't give a shit about the middle class. They're working on behalf of somebody. Look, there's some things that I do know, albeit tangentially. When Trump first came into office, he wasn't expecting to win. And he had to put together a team of people that he didn't know and didn't trust and were thrust upon him. And he assumed that because, somebody recommended them and they were part of the Republican establishment, that they were going to work in concert with what he wanted to do. And the first 4 years, he was just attacked on all sides, from outside the tent and inside the tent. And then, despite what you think about it, what happened in 2020, whether or not it was legitimate, then they tried to take him out to the extent of trying to kill him a handful of times, put him in jail, everything else. I will tell you, this time was different. They moved the entire establishment out of DC down to Mar-a-Lago, and they put together a team of trusted advisors 7 to 8 months before the election in anticipation of winning. And then they brought together the most competent people that he knew he could trust. And then they went into tactical planning sessions that were aligned with an overall strategy. And I know that because I know some people who are sitting in the room. So again, they removed themselves from the Mordor on the Potomac, where all the corruption is, and they set up in Florida. And they went through things like mission planning sessions. And in those sessions, there were defined, um, what's our mission statement, that were clear, measurable, achievable. What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What are our available resources? What are the threats? What are lessons learned from the last time? All integrated into the plan. And then they what ifed it to death. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if the other thing happens? Then they planned for contingencies. Then they brought in red teams who asked questions and tried to poke holes in the plans. So my frustration only lies with the people who say they're all stupid, there's no plan, they're just reacting. I know that is not true. I know that that's false. And that's all. And do I really care that much? Not really. I'm in Bitcoin. It's all good. But I would say that, I don't like dishonesty when I know it to be false, and I call it out, or at least I try to.
Sorry, I don't know where we were with hands, and I'm not
Uh,
sure if Terence is still eating his breakfast.
can I
Terence,
go? I've got to run in a
please,
bit.
please. Yeah,
So
fly in
I,
there.
I couldn't agree with Puncher more, right? I mean, many of us have spent time and were plugged in during the time that Trump, you know, all eyes were on him and they were trying to incarcerate him, right? And so we were plugged into all kinds of information flow on what he was doing behind the scenes. And at the end of the day, I'm heavy invested into Bitcoin and MicroStrategy. And it is frustrating. And I do agree with Joe that, God dang it, this is kind of sidetracking what we had in our minds regarding Bitcoin. But for me, being an American, watching this play out, if it takes a little longer and we can right the ship for the benefit of the American people, I'm okay with that. And it bothers me when I hear a guy like Joe belittle people on these spaces and speak for us as a group. That's the frustrating part for me. So anyway, there's my 2 cents.
Well said. That's I was kind of getting to that when I was saying you guys, because it just seemed like he was implying that there's just a collective group of, or maybe even the vast majority of whatever. Because I think sometimes I find myself disagreeing with Joe, but still trying to be more political about it and not go to blows. And that's not to say I don't appreciate, some of you folks when you step up and get in the ring and swing haymakers with them. So, Terrence.
I would hire Joe tomorrow, by the way, as a personal attorney. I would love for Joe to be my
Yeah,
friend.
hired.
Make no bones about that.
I concur. There was a lot of hands, and I don't know what order they were in, Terrence.
I have something to add briefly if you'll let me go.
Please,
Yep.
Eric, jump in there.
I think Taylor also just, if no one else can see it,
No, there's a
Yeah.
ton of hands up
Yeah.
actually.
Oh, okay.
And for some
Okay.
reason we can't hear Terrence. So Terrence, we can't hear you if you're speaking. Oh, Humble was next actually. I mean, Humble was right after Puncher. Sorry, Humble.
That's okay.
Good to hear your voice.
It's good to be here, guys.
Let's go Humble and then Eric. Sorry, Eric.
So no, the thing that I was wondering about is if anyone has heard anything about this. When we're talking about contingency plans, my concern would be pharmaceuticals. Like what are they thinking as far as that goes? If there's any supply chain disruptions that will occur, obviously crisis or the prices will go up. We're going to be dealing with that, the ready dosed drugs, but penicillin, I think they supply like 80% of the global penicillin market. So it's interesting to me because I'm like, all right, we're not going to be talking about supply chain disruptions just yet, but we're going to be talking about cost increases. So is that going to be something that the insurance companies are going to take a hit with, or is it going to be passed on to us? There's also some cancer treatments that they supply us with too. So I don't know. It's very interesting to me, that part of it, because that's very complicated and that will affect many of us and our loved ones potentially.
I think those are great points because there's many items that fit into these classifications, but I also think it's a point where it's obvious capitulation in those circumstances because we can't, go ahead and create those kinds of things on our soil within a year or two. It's going to take a lot of time. There's bureaucratic red tape and other things. So I really don't think it's even possible to really think there's some sort of long-term strategy when it comes to the insane tariffs on things exactly like that. So that's a great point. Just to try to get to some hands, we're going to go Eric next. And if anybody wants to chime in on that one, did we lose Dark? Is he still in here? Because he might have had something to say on that one as well. Anyway, sorry, Eric, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Thanks for having me. So, a little bit of context. I'm a small business owner. I've owned my own business since 18. I've done tens of millions of dollars in sales. I went to college and dropped out junior year when I realized I was making more money than my professors running my business. And so I'm a self-trained Austrian economist. I run my business from that perspective. It's served me well. When I want to look at a building that's falling apart and it's got a terrible foundation, is a disorderly collapse or controlled demolition a better outcome? And I'd like to set the context of what I'm about to say with that in mind, because I think most people on the call know that our economy and the way things are set up is unsustainable. We have to address Triffin's dilemma. The average global reserve currency lasts 80 to 110 years. We are running out of runway. Maybe Joe's right. Maybe we have 10 more years. Okay. But like the administration in charge at that time, are we really going to trust their competence to do this? To make the assumption that someone who has been talking about trade war and tariffs for literally the last 2 years before they've been elected does not have the right team, the right playbook, and mapped out approaches for game theory is just preposterous. Okay. There is certainly a plan here. It's got branches and there's responses that have to be taken based on your opponent's move in the chess game. But like in game theory, you don't reveal your hand
The reason the majority of us don't know what's going to happen next is because this administration is very good at that. We don't know what tools they still have available. We don't know what they're going to do next. But you know what that also means? That also means no one else does. That means China doesn't know. That means our trading partners don't know. And that I think is the beauty of the way this is going down. We all know that all roads lead to Bitcoin. The question is just when.
Terence, were you able to make it back in here? Okay. Terence was having
Well said.
some
Well
issues
said.
and was thinking about, yeah, agreed. Thinking about resetting the space. But old Taylor, I see your hand.
Yeah. I think I had my hand up long before about the last 8 people. So I was trying to respond to Joe, and so the problem with what Joe was saying, in my view, and I think Dark got frustrated and just left. That's where Dark went, which
Dark's on
you have to.
Cardone space right now. Yeah.
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah. So I think that the problem that I have with what Joe says, because I actually respect Joe and think he's a smart guy, and he just has a drastically different perspective from me most of the time. But I appreciate what he has to say. And the problem I have here is that his characterization, I don't think fits anyone in this room or in this group generally. I don't think anyone here are QAnon, trust the plan, every little step of the way is a part of the plan of people. I think pretty much everyone here thinks there's some, larger plan in place, and that of course there's fog of war basically going on and decisions being made throughout and reacting to what happens next, and that's all part of it with long-term larger goals in mind. And I think it's a ridiculous characterization by Joe that he keeps trying to shove this narrative that everyone here is just oh, the every little step is 4D chess. I don't think anyone here thinks that or believes that. I think like those of us that are supportive of the administration's actions believe that there's a larger plan, and we believe that that they're just trying to implement that
Also,
plan.
Donald Trump has been negotiating deals for
That's
50
right,
freaking
and he's been
years.
talking about
And,
tariffs
and, and, and it's
publicly for
always
4
a back
years.
and forth. It's always a back and
That's
forth. Sorry to
exactly
hijack, but
right.
it's it's always a
No,
back
no
and
worries.
forth thing. Yeah,
No, get in here,
yeah.
Matt. We love it.
It's always
Hijack away.
it's always a back and forth deal. He's been doing real estate deals in New York City, one of the hardest markets to do it because you've got to get squeezed between capital and labor and then the city. It's really difficult. You've got to basically, my friends do it. They call it knife fighting in a hallway, right? Your mind starts running away. It's very difficult to do it. And he's been doing it for like 30 plus years. Anyway, the punchline is there's a structural problem where we are essentially direct depositing $1 trillion into the CCP's bank account. And this was always an us versus China thing. And it's a short-term, there's no short-term solution to structural problems where we don't have enough manufacturing capability or capacity. And we don't have, for instance, the ability to make key medicines and heart valves and things like that. That has to be, immediately solve for, but it doesn't happen immediately. You just have to start solving for it by bringing demand signals back to our country. Right now, the demand signals get to leave and they go someplace else. Using tariffs, we create some walls, and now those demand signals are going to get captured in the U.S. and price is going to dictate. And suddenly, there's going to be opportunities, and people are going to start creating capacity here in America. And I think we're going to be building out a federation and working with other countries around China that have been. If you look at President Trump's language, he mentioned how China has been unfair to other nations, and that's why he's doing the 125%. That speaks to me that there's some sort of a group that's going to be formed with Vietnam, Malaysia, Philippines, some other countries that are around China that are essentially going to be counterbalancing against them. And I think that's a good thing for us.
Yes. Sorry, everybody, if we didn't get your hands. When we minimize, the hands go away, so we can't see them. So we have to go by memory, and my memory sucks. But I think Duke has had his hand up for a while, and then Fiat Fire. So Duke, how are you?
Hey, good morning, guys. Terence, it's been a while since I listened to your space of yours, and since I heard from you. Tomer, good to see you guys. Just wanted to add to the conversation, but
think a lot of the people who have spoken earlier, especially Puncher, they took away from the things I needed to say. Just a background context on me. I am a recently, I'll say, I guess, retired military person. I'm not that old, but just recently retired from the military. So I spent a lot of time, my last 4 years actually, spent teaching on military planning. So that was going to be the point I was going to make. Um, the major thing I wanted to say was the whole thing about, plans don't survive first contact. I mean, that's that's a fallacy, honestly. We have a way to actually mitigate that. We call it branches, sequels, things that you don't plan for that come up on a battle on a on a battlefield, I guess. You have just a plan to mitigate that. There's no your plans will survive first contact. The framework always survives, but you have to plan for things that are that you may not anticipate, and that goes into the whole planning process. A campaign plan may take months or even years to develop. Something like this probably has taken years to develop. So I don't think that this administration is shooting off the hip, and to make the assertion that they're shooting off the hip is, I think, it's kind of reckless from, especially even from us in the peanut gallery, because if we are talking about it and people are listening, it doesn't give people the confidence out there that that something, that this is being done in a smart way. So I am a nobody, but I want to tell people. I will say,
But wouldn't they have planned? So I'm not trying to be rude here, but I just wouldn't they have planned for there being people on Twitter Spaces talking about the them shooting from the hip in one of their branches of their plan? Like, and I say it kind of as a reductio ad absurdum. Like, there's only so many things you can plan for.
yeah, you're right. I mean, that's a factor, right? The effect right now, just as a planner, the effect of the comments from Twitter Spaces and all these places is not really factored in yet. But as society develops, you will see these things. They'll start taking these things into consideration. We do take social media impressions into consideration when we do planning, just to see how people are talking about things. We've started doing that for a while now, but in this context, we haven't done this like in the financial. This is a new thing. This is a new kind of war, quote unquote, for for the world, and for really for the West, America, Canada, all these people. This is a new kind of war that we are seeing right now. So we really don't have that much of a context. So, and I think to your point, Tomer, as we go further, as the years develop, these things will be taken into consideration to see how the public will react to these type of things. As you can see, the behavior in the markets kind of shows that, like, hey, people are not confident, people are kind of scared, people are panicked. Those things will be taken into account as the planning goes along. So those are the kind of points I just wanted to make and say, hey, everybody just calm down. I think that there is a plan. It's just that it doesn't do us any good if we are not in the room and then making definitive statements, because that kind of that kind of hurts the confidence of the consumer out there. It even hurts us. We are the good guys fighting the bad guys. One other point I wanted to make was there's
Make
just
it
a
quick.
yeah,
Land your plane.
yeah.
37 seconds. Go.
They just put out a statement saying that, I think Bessent was saying that this was the Trump's strategy all along. And I would say, well, a lot of people are going to say, well, he capitulated. But if you look at how China behaves, I think they counted that China was going to be defiant and then escalate and then isolate them. So this whole thing about this 90-day pause, now you have a conglomeration of countries supporting the United States, and now China is isolated as the only bad guy right now fighting this whole tariff thing. It might have been the plan. Maybe it might have been a capitulation. I'm not there. I don't know what the plan looks like, but that's just the points I was trying to make. But thank you
Awesome.
for giving me the mic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, we're not. No, don't take it offensively. We've just gone way over, and so we were just trying to wrap the space up. But we did want to give people the last chances to say their piece. We are at Fiat Fire. Put your hand up if you want to have parting comments, because we might just skip that part. Usually at the end we go around the horn, but just throw your hand up if you do have parting comments. Fiat Fire.
Hey, yeah, I'm not sure whether the point is, if Trump had a plan or not. I think that shooting from the hip can be part of a plan. That giving the appearance that you're shooting from the hip can be a part of the plan. Um, I will say though that Trump's been talking about tariffs for many decades. So I just don't buy the idea that he came in 2016 sort of unprepared, in a way that he was going to be prepared in the future. I don't think that he expected the problems with the farmers during the first term with the tariffs, and that they had to be bailed out. Peter Navarro was there last term. He's there this time. So I don't think that there's anything, uh, you know, no good plan is going to be overly complicated. So I think this was basically the plan. It's gonna it's gonna fail at certain points. It's gonna succeed at certain points. So what Joe was saying about that there are people that always say that he's playing 4D chess. I think that's true. There are people that do that, and I think that that's just sort of missing the point. There's no reason to play 4D chess. Usually 4D chess doesn't work out. So that's all I wanted to say. And also what I do think there is a plan about, and what I do think there are people who have expertise in, unlike tariffs, is Bitcoin. The people that are around him about Bitcoin, that's going to succeed.
Well said. Once again, throw your hand up if you want to give some parting words. Terrence is having connection issues. We've gone way over. Still waiting for those hands. We'll play us out with some music, but Vegas, guys, be thinking about it. I changed my tickets so we could. I'm coming a little early. If not, Terrence, whenever you want. Goodbye, everybody. Have a great day. We'll play us out. Money talks and pay for the show, pay for the clown, pay for the thrill, pay for the media to lie to our face. Taught the tricks, we repeat our mistakes. Sell us a dream that never delivers. More raking in fees and clipping the tickets. Siphoning funds from the mouth of the spigot. Blindly to blind to the all come to us. Money is cheap and addicted to growth. Commingle the risks and